Chapter 2295. What? Are you telling the truth? Su Yuan was excited when he heard Su Tai's explanation. If that was the case, then the thing he wanted to find must be in that space. Only that thing could lift his seal. However, Su Yuan still had a question. Since Su Tai's seal had been lifted, why would he still contact him? Could it be that he was unwilling to be free? Moreover, that thing was definitely a supreme treasure. Did Su Tai not have the slightest greed in his heart? Su Yuan did not believe this at all. Therefore, although Su Yuan was very excited, he had not lost his mind. It was impossible for him to completely believe Su Tai. After all, he was not without enemies in the 1,000-dragon divine domain. At the very least, he had two enemies. Both of them wanted nothing more than to kill him. If they had the chance to kill him, they would definitely not be stingy with their strength. Therefore, Su Yuan was still very careful. He could not rashly go there just because of Su Tai's words. Even if he wanted to go, he would make sufficient preparations and leave a way out before taking action. My lord, how would I dare to deceive you? If you want to kill me, you can do it with a flick of your finger. Moreover, I want to obtain a purer bloodline power. My cultivation has reached a bottleneck. My lord, you know that I have an enemy. Now, his strength has far surpassed mine. Moreover, he has the protection of the flaming dragons. If this continues, I'm afraid that I won't have any hope of revenge. Su Tai said, You want me to help you take revenge? This is not a big problem. As long as what you said is true, then I can increase your strength enough for you to take revenge on your own. However, if you are lying to me, then you should know the consequences of lying to me. What I hate the most is being deceived and betrayed. There have been people who have deceived and betrayed me, and they all didn't have a good ending. You should be very clear about this. Su Yuan looked at Su Tai and said coldly. In fact, Su Yuan was very confident. Su Tai knew his methods very well. With Su Tai's character, he would not dare to betray him. However, if Su Tai was controlled by someone, then it would be different. For an expert like the 1,000 Dragons Emperor, it was very easy for him to control a mere Su Tai. Therefore, Su Yuan was still apprehensive and did not completely trust Su Tai. Before going there, he must inquire about the good news. It was impossible for him to act rashly. My lord, all of this is true. I can swear that I did find that place. However, I'm not particularly sure if there's something you want there. Because I could only enter the edge of the forbidden area. I was thrown out before I entered the depths of that place. There's a powerful existence there. Su Tai explained. All right, I'll believe you this time. Su Yuan's tone became a little excited as he listened. According to Su Tai, that place might be the place of inheritance left behind by that expert. As for the powerful existence inside, it should be the guardian of the place of inheritance. Any expert would leave behind a guardian for their inheritance. This guardian was to protect the inheritance, and at the same time, it was also to choose the inheritor and protect the inheritor. Once the inheritor found a fated person, then the guardian would become the fated person's guardian, protecting the fated person and allowing the fated person to grow up. When the fated person grew strong enough, the guardian would leave or follow the fated person. Therefore, it was very normal for there to be an expert in that place of inheritance. It would be strange if there was no aura of an expert. Yuan Long Shan. Su Tai said. Yuan Long Shan, you're not lying to me? Hearing Su Tai mention the Yuan Long Mountain, Su Yuan couldn't believe it. The Yuan Long Mountain was actually a very ordinary mountain. There was nothing special in the Yuan Long Mountain, it was too ordinary. The spiritual qi in the Yuan Long Mountain was very thin. There were no treasures in the Yuan Long Mountain. Because of the thin spiritual qi, there weren't any powerful spiritual objects around the Yuan Long Mountain. The entire Yuan Long Mountain didn't seem to have any supreme treasures at all. It's true, old ancestor. I'm not lying to you. It's indeed in Yuan Long Shan. In the depths of Yuan Longshan, there's a formation. This formation is the entrance to that secret place. It's very secretive. Su Tai explained. All right, wait for me in Yuan Longshan. Su Yuan couldn't wait any longer. In fact, he already believed that the Yuanlong Mountain looked ordinary, but it was very special. There was a special power on the Yuanlong Mountain. Only a trace of this special power leaked out, and ordinary people couldn't find it at all. If they didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to catch it at all. This was because the Yuanlong Mountain was too ordinary, and the spiritual qi was too thin. Therefore, the real experts and even ordinary cultivators wouldn't enter the Yuanlong Mountain. Those who lived in the Yuanlong Mountain were just ordinary people. After saying that, Su Yuan cut off the communication jade talisman. After Su Yuan cut off the communication jade talisman, Yang Hongwu looked at Su Tai and said, "What is the thing that the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan wants? Why is he so nervous? Why does he value it so much?" This was what Yang Hongwu was very curious about. This thing was so important to the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan. Moreover, he was so secretive and did not want others to know about it. There must be something wrong. What Yang Hongwu cared about was whether this thing was related to the Void Dragon Gate that he wanted. If it was related to the Void Dragon Gate, then he must get it. Moreover, for Yang Hongwu, the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan, Su Yuan was also a strong opponent if he wanted to obtain the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. If he could make the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan fight to the death with the other experts in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, then it would be of great help to him. Of course, before that, Yang Hongwu had to understand the situation. That is a clan mark, the Yen Huang Nine Dragon Seal. This supreme treasure was originally the clan treasure of the Yen Huang tribe. It is said that the Yen Huang tribe used to rule the entire Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. However, because the Yen Huang Nine Dragon Seal was lost, the Yen Huang tribe declined. In addition to various other reasons, the Yen Huang tribe became mortals today. They did not even produce a decent cultivator. Su Tai said. In fact, he was very careful when he spoke. This was because he could see that this person before him was definitely closely related to the Yen Huang tribe. Therefore, Su Tai was worried that Yang Hongwu would be angry. He could not bear the consequences now. Yang Hongwu saw Su Tai's worry and said, "You don't have to worry. I won't be angry. Since the Yen Huang Nine Dragon Seal is the clan treasure of the Yen Huang tribe, it is not surprising that the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan wants it. However, given his strength, such a supreme treasure should not be of much help to him, right? Why would he spend so much effort to get the Yen Huang Nine Dragons insignia?" "This, young master, I do not know either," Su Tai said. Chapter 2296. Do you really have news about the Yen Huang Nine Dragon Seal? Yang Hongwu looked at Su Tai and said, "Is there really such a secret realm in Yuanlong Mountain?" If there was really such a mysterious place, Yang Hongwu was really prepared to go in and take a look. For Yang Hongwu now, although there was not enough time, he did not lack this bit of time. It was not a big deal to go and take a look. If he could really get something out of it, the benefits would naturally be huge. Since that was the case, why not? Anyway, he had to go to Yuanlong Mountain. After all, Su Tai had lured the Void Demon ancestor out. He would definitely go to Yuanlong Mountain. He had to make some arrangements. After all, the Void Demon ancestor was not weak, even if he had not reached the universe realm. Although he was not at the level of the Eternity Overlord, he should not be far away. Well, it's not that mysterious. However, I did find something strange in Yuanlong Mountain. There's a very strange secret realm in Yuanlong Mountain. I can't enter that secret realm. Originally, I wanted to wait until my cultivation improved before taking a look at this secret realm. However, in order to complete the task you gave me, I have no choice but to reveal this secret. Su Tai was also very helpless. In fact, he really didn't want to reveal such a secret. He came because he felt that there should be a huge opportunity in this secret realm in Yuanlong Mountain. If he could get this opportunity, then he could really get rid of the control of the Void Demon Ancestor. However, now, although he had gotten rid of the control of the Void Demon Ancestor, he had fallen into the hands of another person. It was the man in front of him. His cultivation level did not seem high, but his origin was strange and mysterious. His strength was terrifying. Yuanlong Mountain should not be far from here, right? Yang Hongwu looked at him and said, "Not far, just a few hundred li away." "We can get there quickly," Sutai said. In fact, at this time, Sutai had a lot of thoughts. The man in front of him was strong and mysterious. The two women were not weak either. Especially the woman who was actually from the Holy Devil tribe. These three people were outside the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, but were not suppressed by the laws of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. If these three people could injure the Void Demon Ancestor, or even both sides died, it would be a huge advantage for him. However, how could Yang Hongwu not see through his thoughts? Yang Hongwu just didn't point it out. To Yang Hongwu, this was nothing at all. If Yang Hongwu wanted to injure him and the Void Yuan Ancestor, Yang Hongwu would have to do it. Yang Hongwu really didn't care. If he wasn't strong enough, Yang Hongwu wouldn't have chosen to face the Void Demon Patriarch, the Void Yuan Patriarch. That guy had treated the Yen Huang tribe like this. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had a great enmity with him. However, from another point of view, this enmity was nothing. Although the Yen Huang tribe here might very well have the same bloodline as Wu Yu, their relationship was not that close. They were not blood-related. In fact, their relationship was very distant. If they were biological brothers, then it would be a real deep hatred. The reason Yang Hongwu did this now was that he was very angry with the Void Demon Ancestor's actions. Moreover, he would face the other party sooner or later. Therefore, there was not much difference between earlier and later. "Let's go to Yuanlong Mountain," Yang Hongwu said softly. "Lead the way." "Yes, young master." Although Su Tai had a lot of thoughts in his mind, he could not wait for Yang Hongwu and Su Yuan to injure each other so that he could reap the benefit. However, his expression was still very calm. He did not show any fluctuations. What he did not know was that Yang Hongwu had already seen through his thoughts. To Yang Hongwu, Su Tai did not intend to keep him alive. Yang Hongwu had said that he would not kill him, but he could let the two women do it. Moreover, if Wu wanted to kill a person, he would not care about anything, especially such an evil person. It could be said that he was an unforgivable person. There was no need to worry about killing him. Under Su Tai's lead, they quickly arrived at an inconspicuous mountain range. However, while this mountain range was nothing in the eyes of others, it was completely different in Yang Hongwu's eyes. How was this a mountain range? It was clearly a sleeping giant dragon. Yang Hongwu took a deep breath. This giant dragon was still alive, but it had fallen into a deep slumber. It seemed that it had consumed too much of its energy and suffered serious injuries. It had been here for an unknown number of years. Was it still alive? Was it still alive? Was it still alive? It was sealed here. The cultivation level of this giant dragon had probably surpassed the level of a universe overlord, which was why no one in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain had noticed it. Moreover, the spiritual energy here was very thin. That was the reason why no one in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain had noticed. Because of this giant dragon, it had swallowed and absorbed all the spiritual energy in the surroundings, causing the spiritual energy here to be so thin. It was impossible to nurture powerful creatures. If this guy woke up, he really would not be able to deal with him. This was a huge problem. "Young master, we're here. This is the Yuanlong Mountain. The spiritual energy here is very thin. If you stay here for too long, your strength may leak out bit by bit. Therefore, ordinary cultivators won't stay here for too long. I stayed here for a long time, but because of that, I was able to find that secret realm, Su Tai explained. Where is the entrance to the secret realm? Hurry up and take us there. At this time, Zi Xintong and Lu Yu were a little anxious. Since it was so mysterious, it had piqued their curiosity. Perhaps they could obtain a powerful inheritance, such as the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal. After all, that treasure was definitely not simple if it could make the Void Demon ancestor care so much about it. Even if it was not of much use, it was still a good thing to get their hands on it. Who would dislike having it in their hands? Too many treasures? Please come with me, Su Tai said hurriedly. Don't worry, I already know the location. Yang Hongwu stopped the two girls at this time. Young master, you found the entrance to the secret realm? Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, Su Tai was incredibly shocked. He didn't dare to believe it. The entrance to this secret realm was very difficult to find. Back then, he had only discovered it by accident. If it was not by chance, he would not have been able to find the entrance to this secret realm. I found it. Yang Hongwu nodded and said, however, I can already sense Su Yuan's aura. Your ancestor is coming. Let's deal with him first. Chapter 2297. Su Tai's expression changed slightly when he heard Yang Hongwu say that old ancestor Su Yuan was coming. He was still very afraid of old ancestor Su Yuan. Even though the seal on his body had been removed, he was still very afraid of this old ancestor of the Void Demon clan. After all, the impression he left on Su Tai was too deep. His terrifying and cruel methods were still fresh in Su Tai's mind. Young master, are you confident in dealing with that old man? Su Tai looked at Yang Hongwu with worry in his eyes. He hated old ancestor Su Yuan very much. That old bastard didn't treat him as a human at all. Although Su Tai's own strength had benefited from old ancestor Su Yuan, old ancestor Su Yuan had also made Su Tai suffer unimaginable pain. Su Tai even clearly remembered that his clansmen, his parents, didn't die in an accident. They died at the hands of old ancestor Su Yuan, not the blazing dragons. Old ancestor Su Yuan thought that Su Tai didn't know about this. Little did he know that Su Tai had already known about this secret. The reason why Su Tai pretended not to know and showed endless hatred towards the blazing dragons was because he didn't want old ancestor Su Yuan to know about this. His own strength was too weak. He couldn't compete with old ancestor Su Yuan at all. Moreover, old ancestor Su Yuan controlled his life and death. If old ancestor Su Yuan knew that he already knew that old ancestor Su Yuan was his enemy, then his death would come, let alone his revenge. Even if he knew that his enemy was in front of him, he had to endure. He had to endure for the sake of his own life and for the sake of his revenge in the future. No matter what, he had to endure. He had no other choice. Of course, more importantly, he still needed to borrow old ancestor Su Yuan's strength. Only old ancestor Su Yuan could help him increase his cultivation and make him stronger. Only by becoming stronger could he possess everything. He understood the importance of strength. Right now, he had an excellent opportunity. It was the man in front of them. He was young and his cultivation didn't seem to be high, but his strength was frighteningly frightening. He didn't even care about old ancestor Su Yuan. If he was strong enough, then this would be a real opportunity for Su Tai to take revenge and become stronger. If the man in front of him won this battle, then it wouldn't affect him at all. At the very least, the man in front of him didn't place a seal on him. Moreover, if the two of them perishing together, then it would be even better for him. He could obtain various treasures from these two people and become stronger, reaching the same cultivation realm as Void's old ancestor Su Yuan. He could even combine the two and become even stronger, perhaps even surpassing Void's old ancestor. Therefore, this battle was actually very important to Su Tai. If Yang Hongwu was killed without any room to resist, it would be a fatal blow to Su Tai. This was something he couldn't accept at all. This was because Ancestor Su Yuan hated people who betrayed him the most. Once someone betrayed him and was caught by him, the betrayer wouldn't have a good end. It would be a fate worse than death. He couldn't afford such a price at all. Therefore, the bottom line in his heart was that either Yang Hongwu would win or both sides would suffer great losses. He absolutely couldn't allow old ancestor Su Yuan to win this battle. Of course, in his mind, the possibility of ancestor Su Yuan winning this battle was very small because Yang Hongwu gave him the feeling that Yang Hongwu was too powerful and terrifying. Yang Hongwu's bloodline power was terrifying. As long as ancestor Su Yuan unleashed his bloodline power, ancestor Su Yuan wouldn't even have the thought to resist. Although ancestor Su Yuan was powerful, he couldn't make ancestor Su Yuan feel this way. This was enough to prove that Yang Hongwu was much more powerful than ancestor Su Yuan. He's just a little devil from the Void Demon clan. He's nothing. I can deal with him. There's no need for him to do anything. At this moment, Zi Xintong snorted when she heard Su Tai's words. The Void Demon clan and the Saint Demon clan were both demon clans, but the difference between their bloodlines was huge. The Saint Demon clan was the true king of the demon clan, but the Void Demon clan was different. Their bloodline wasn't strong enough to support the birth of a true pinnacle master. If a race didn't have a true master, then it would never become a truly strong race. In fact, no matter what race it was, if a supreme being was born in a race, then the bloodline power of that race would be strengthened. The more powerful the master was, the stronger the bloodline power of that race would be. Of course, the so-called master here had to be a universe overlord. Masters who hadn't reached the overlord level couldn't achieve this unless they were from a special bloodline race. Su Tai heard Zi Xintong's words and didn't believe her. He had fought with Zi Xintong before. Although Zi Xintong's strength wasn't bad and was stronger than his, there was still a limit to her strength. Compared to old ancestor Su Yuan, there was still a huge gap. If they really fought, Zi Xintong wouldn't be able to last more than a few rounds before being beaten to death. What? Are you looking down on me? Seeing Su Tai's expression, Zi Xintong was very angry. She was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Yang Hongwu was speechless. After entering this god domain, Zi Xintong seemed to become more and more irritable. She couldn't control her emotions, which made Yang Hongwu frown slightly. This wasn't a good sign. It seemed that Zi Xintong's state of mind was unstable. If this continued, something bad would happen. After dealing with old ancestor Su Yuan, he had to stabilize Zi Xintong's state of mind. If he waited until she went berserk, then it would be too late. No, that's not what I meant. Although old ancestor Su Yuan's strength isn't as strong as young master's, he still can't be underestimated. In fact, this place can be said to be old ancestor Su Yuan's home. Old ancestor Su Yuan is very cunning and can't be underestimated. I think it's better for us to be careful and not have any accidents, right? Su Tai hurriedly explained. You little demon, you still don't believe me. Do you believe me when I say that I'll beat you to death? Zi Xintong raised her fist and threatened in a cold voice. Su Tai was shocked when he saw this. He quickly hid behind Yang Hongwu. Well, your state of mind is a bit unstable right now. You have to pay attention. Let me deal with the old ancestor of the Void Devil clan. Yang Hongwu said and mobilized his power to intimidate the mind. At this time, Zi Xintong finally reacted. She was indeed a bit irritable and her state of mind was somewhat unstable. Chapter 2298. Let me see the strength of the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan. Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes. The battle with the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan was inevitable. It would happen sooner or later. There was no difference whether it happened earlier or later. Young master, you must be careful. Although young master is very powerful, and that old man is certainly not your opponent, That old man has many tricks up his sleeves. If young master is careless, you will suffer. Su Tai said. It doesn't matter. I have my own plans. Yang Hongwu didn't care about Su Tai's words at all. Every old ancestor had many tricks up his sleeve. How could it be that simple to reach his current realm and sit in such a position? Each and every one of them was ruthless and merciless. Their hands were stained with blood. They had climbed up from mountains of corpses and seas of bones. Even Yang Hongwu himself was no exception. The number of people who had died in his hands was innumerable. Even he himself couldn't remember. However, there was one thing that Yang Hongwu had a clear conscience about. It could be said that he hadn't killed any good person because he possessed the Red Lotus Hellfire and the Dharma Eye of Annihilation. He could see whether a person had karma or not. In fact, everything in the world had karma. There was not a single person who had not committed the sin of killing. It was just a matter of how big or small the sin of killing was. Even Yang Hongwu himself was the same. He could only minimize his karma. Therefore, the people he killed were those who had committed grave sins. If they didn't have too much karma and he didn't have to kill them, he wouldn't kill them. Of course, there were some special circumstances. If someone blocked his path and posed a threat to his woman, Yang Hongwu would show no mercy. No matter who they were, whether they were good or evil, as long as they blocked his path and posed a threat to his woman, they must die. There was no other choice. Yang Hongwu knew that he had changed. He was no longer as simple as he used to be. In his eyes, there was a murderous intent. This murderous intent was one that did not care about the cost and consequences. As long as it was beneficial to his woman, this murderous intent would not be restrained. Su Tai didn't say anything after hearing Yang Hongwu's words. In fact, he just wanted to remind him. He didn't want to be killed before Yang Hongwu and old ancestor Su Yuan took action. In that case, all his calculations would be in vain. He knew very well that now, he was here with Yang Hongwu and the other two. Even if old ancestor Su Yuan was stupid, he knew that he had betrayed him. Old ancestor Su Yuan would be the first to take action against a traitor. Old ancestor Su Yuan was that kind of person. Before the battle, he must deal with the traitor first. Therefore, Su Tai was worried and reminded Yang Hongwu. Otherwise, he wished that the two of them would fight to the death. After all, in Su Tai's mind, Yang Hongwu was stronger than old ancestor Su Yuan. Old ancestor Su Yuan had many tricks up his sleeve. If Yang Hongwu was prepared enough, old ancestor Su Yuan would be easily defeated or even killed. In that case, he wouldn't be able to obtain the greatest benefits. However, for the sake of his own life, he still hoped that Yang Hongwu would take the initiative and take action against old ancestor Su Yuan first. Once Yang Hongwu took the initiative, old ancestor Su Yuan, the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan, wouldn't be distracted to deal with him. He would have to deal with Yang Hongwu first before having the opportunity to deal with him. Su Tai, you really betrayed me? At this time, old ancestor Su Yuan arrived. He saw Su Tai behind Yang Hongwu and the three people in front of Su Tai. The two women were very strong, but they were nothing in his eyes. He was the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan. He was one of the top experts in the 1,000-dragon divine domain. If he used his full strength, no one in the 1,000-dragon divine domain would be able to stop him. Except for the 1,000-dragon emperor, no one would be his opponent. However, among the three people, one of the women made him somewhat afraid. This woman was from the Saint Demon clan, and she was from the royal family of the Saint Demon clan. The bloodline of the Saint Demon clan in her body was very strong. As the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan, he certainly knew about the Saint Demon clan. The Saint Demon clan was much stronger than the Void Demon clan. The true masters of the Saint Demon clan were existences that surpassed the universe overlord level. In the Void Demon clan, there had only been universe overlords, but there had never been an existence that surpassed the universe overlord level. Although the cultivation of the woman from the Saint Demon clan in front of him wasn't high, he didn't dare to be careless or look down on her. However, what he was most afraid of wasn't the two women, but the man between the two women. This man's cultivation wasn't high, but he gave him a terrifying feeling. This feeling made him vigilant because the aura of this man made him feel that he was too dangerous. It could even endanger his life. He even had the thought of retreating. However, he soon came to his senses. How could this be? He had been forced to retreat by a half-step Tao Master Cultivator without even making a move. How could he show his face now? What's more, what he wanted was probably in the Cloud Dragon Mountain. He also discovered the uniqueness of the Cloud Dragon Mountain. Although the spiritual chi in the Cloud Dragon Mountain was thin, it was indeed a treasured land. The spiritual chi in the surroundings was constantly flowing into the Cloud Dragon Mountain. However, the spiritual chi in the Cloud Dragon Mountain was pitifully thin. Where did the spiritual chi go? Obviously, it was devoured by the Cloud Dragon Mountain. Or rather, it was devoured by something in the Cloud Dragon Mountain. What was that thing? How could he not be suspicious? Therefore, this was the reason why he didn't want to leave this place. He knew that it was dangerous, but he still wanted to stay. Wealth came from danger. As the saying goes, men die for wealth and birds die for food. This was the truth. Ancestor Su Yuan had been stuck in this realm for a long time. He wanted to go further and reach a higher level. He wanted to become the master of the 1,000-dragon divine realm. What he needed was this opportunity. Su Yuan, you old bastard. Do you think I don't know that you killed my entire family? You even framed the flaming dragons. Do you think I don't know? I, Su Tai, am not a fool. Now, with the young master here, your strength is not enough. If you know what's good for you, kneel down and beg for mercy and kill yourself. Perhaps the young master will leave your corpse intact. I will even disregard the past and plead for mercy on your behalf. I will ask the young master to be magnanimous and let your clan go. Su Tai didn't wait for Yang Hongwu to speak. Chapter 2299. You're courting death. I'll kill you first. Su Tai's words had thoroughly infuriated old ancestor Su Yuan. He erupted with a terrifying rage. He stretched out his hand and threw a punch towards Su Tai. This punch was made out of old ancestor Su Yuan's anger. Naturally, the power that erupted from it was quite terrifying. Su Tai was scared out of his wits when he saw this scene. He never thought that old ancestor Su Yuan would actually make a move at this time. Shouldn't old ancestor Su Yuan deal with Yang Hongwu first? He hid behind Yang Hongwu and said, "Young master, save me. Today, no one can save you." Su Tai's voice made old ancestor Su Yuan stare at him even more. Su Tai had completely infuriated him. A traitor dared to be so arrogant. His strength wasn't great, but his tone was so arrogant. He was courting death. If he didn't kill him, how could he calm his anger? Therefore, no matter who won or lost in the battle between him and the man in front of him, Su Tai, this traitor, must die. Old ancestor Su Yuan's thoughts wouldn't be clear if he didn't kill him. Seeing old ancestor Su Yuan so angry, Yang Hongwu really wanted him to kill Su Tai directly. However, Yang Hongwu didn't do so. He still blocked old ancestor Su Yuan's attack. Old ancestor Su Yuan's strength wasn't weak. Now, Su Tai had made old ancestor Su Yuan so angry. This proved that Su Tai had become an inner demon in old ancestor Su Yuan's heart. As long as Su Tai didn't die, old ancestor Su Yuan's strength couldn't improve. This was his weakness. Yang Hongwu didn't intend to let Su Tai die when old ancestor Su Yuan was still alive. Although he would attack Su Tai sooner or later, such a person couldn't be allowed to live in this world. Su Tai had committed too many crimes, but now wasn't the time for him to die. You want to kill my people in front of me. Isn't this inappropriate? Yang Hongwu stared at Patriarch Su Yuan and said, You are a mere patriarch of the fiendish Tao. Your strength isn't bad, but that's all. Do you not put me in your eyes? Yang Hongwu's tone was calm without any ripples. However, he only raised his hand and easily blocked the ancestor's attack. This made the ancestor furious and nervous at the same time. This fake was actually so powerful and terrifying. It was beyond his imagination that a mere half-step Tao master, whose cultivation level was much lower than his, could possess such strength. He knew that if he were to face a half-step universe overlord himself, he would not be able to withstand his attack so easily. This way, he could see the difference in strength between him and the man in front of him. At this time, he thought of retreating. He didn't know the depth of this man's strength. On top of that, he was uneasy. If this continued, he might not be able to get the Yen Huang 9 Dragon Seal. Instead, he might lose his life. Who are you? Why are you targeting me? Old ancestor Su Yuan looked at Yang Hongwu and narrowed his eyes. Although he wanted to retreat now, or even fear, he couldn't show it. If he was found out, he might be finished. He knew this very well. He was very curious about the background of this man. Target you? No, you don't have the right to make me target you. I came to the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain to become the ruler of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. You're just a stumbling block in my path, so I'll deal with you first. Yang Hongwu looked at old ancestor Su Yuan and said. He could see that old ancestor Su Yuan was afraid. Yang Hongwu knew that he had been too strong. However, this was what he wanted to see. After all, he couldn't spend too much effort to deal with a mere old ancestor Su Yuan. If he had to pay such a huge price just to deal with him, then wouldn't it be even more difficult to deal with the current ruler of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain? When a person's heart was filled with fear, it became a huge weakness. Although old ancestor Su Yuan was strong, Yang Hongwu had found two weaknesses. One was Su Tai, and the other was that he had lost his will to fight. In this way, it would be much easier to deal with him. Of course, Yang Hongwu didn't dare to be careless. In truth, although Yang Hongwu had blocked old ancestor Su Yuan's angry attack, he had paid a heavy price. You are from outside the domain? How is it possible for you to fight for the control of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain? In the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain, outsiders will never be recognized by the origin of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. Therefore, I advise you to give up. Besides, even if you want to obtain the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain, your greatest enemy isn't me. Why don't we work together? When he heard Yang Hongwu's words, old ancestor Su Yuan had an idea. If he could work together with this man, it would be a huge advantage for him. Firstly, he was from outside the domain, and it was too difficult for people from outside the domain to become the controller of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. This was because they wouldn't be recognized by the origin of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. This had always been the case. The 1000 Dragon Divine Domain would only recognize cultivators with native bloodlines. Outsiders would be rejected. Therefore, this was an excellent opportunity for old ancestor Su Yuan. After all, this outsider was very strong. If he took action, it would be much easier to deal with the Emperor of 1000 Dragons. The Emperor of 1000 Dragons was the current controller of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. He could mobilize the origin power of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain and manipulate the laws of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. This gave him an absolute advantage in the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. No one was a match for him, unless there was someone with an even stronger bloodline of dragons who had gained the recognition of the origin of the 1000 Dragon Divine Domain. This was also why old ancestor Su Yuan wanted the Yen Huang 9 Dragon insignia. He knew that there was a tribe called the Yen Huang tribe that had extremely high bloodline of dragons. It was even higher than the bloodline of the Emperor of 1000 Dragons. However, it was so thin that it was negligible. The insignia of the Yen Huang tribe was the Yen Huang Nine Dragon insignia. Perhaps obtaining the Yen Huang Nine Dragon insignia would allow him to obtain the powerful bloodline of dragons and evolve his bloodline. No, young master, you definitely can't work with him. This old man is extremely cunning. He must be up to no good and wants to scheme against you. Therefore, young master, you must not listen to this old man. He wants to scheme against you. I know that he has done such things too many times. Chapter 2300. Ancestor Su Yuan wasn't worried at all when he saw Su Tai's reaction. How could such an expert, such a genius, be influenced by someone like Su Tai? No matter what Su Tai said, it would be useless. Moreover, for any cultivator, benefits were paramount. Nothing was important in the face of benefit. He wanted to seize the 1,000-dragon divine domain and become its ruler. Obviously, Su Tai wouldn't be of any help to him. However, things would be different if Su Tai joined forces with him. Therefore, Ancestor Su Yuan didn't care about what Su Tai said at all because it was all in vain. What are you trying to say? Yang Hongwu looked at him coldly. Su Tai immediately shut his mouth when he saw Yang Hongwu's reaction. He knew that Yang Hongwu was dissatisfied at this time. If he dared to continue, Yang Hongwu would directly throw him out. Once he was thrown out, he would be dead for sure. Therefore, he wisely shut his mouth at this time. No. Humph, if you continue to be long-winded, I'll kill you. Yang Hongwu ignored him, but Zi Xintong threatened him. You want to cooperate with me? Why should I believe you? Yang Hongwu looked at Ancestor Su Yuan in front of him. What was he trying to do? Cooperate with him? It wasn't very likely. This guy didn't look like a good person at first glance. Moreover, he was on Yang Hongwu's must-kill list. Therefore, no matter what, Yang Hongwu would choose to kill him in the end. There were two reasons why he didn't act directly. First, Yang Hongwu had consumed a lot of energy to block Ancestor Su Yuan's attack. Second, if Ancestor Su Yuan escaped at this time, it would be very difficult to catch him and kill him. During this period of time, Yang Hongwu could choose to set up a formation to trap Ancestor Su Yuan here. You're an outsider from the 1,000-dragon divine domain. You're an outsider. You don't have any foundation or power in the 1,000-dragon divine domain. It's too difficult for you to seize the position of Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. In fact, we have the same goal, which is to deal with the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. After all, he's the current Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. If you want to seize the position of Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain, you have to kill him. As the Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain, he can control the origin energy of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. His battle prowess is extremely terrifying. I'm certain that I'm not a match for him alone. Although you're strong, I don't think you can kill the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. Although you're not strong enough to kill him, I'm sure you'll be able to kill him. After a pause, Ancestor Su Yuan continued. In fact, Ancestor Su Yuan knew that it would be impossible for him to kill the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons or even join forces with his younger brother, the Black Dragon Emperor, without the help of others. The Emperor of 1,000 Dragons was too powerful. With the support of the 1,000 Dragons' divine realm's power, no one would be a match for him as long as he didn't make any mistakes. Of course, if there was someone with a powerful bloodline that surpassed the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons, then the power of laws that he could use as the Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain would be limited. This was because the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons hadn't truly become the ruler of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. The 1,000-dragon divine domain he controlled wasn't complete. If that wasn't the case, the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons wouldn't have been limited. He would have borrowed the power of the 1,000-dragon divine domain to enter the void and become a universe overlord. Yang Hongwu smiled. This guy wanted him to join forces with him to kill the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. That was a good idea. He should be the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons' sworn enemy. The Emperor of 1,000 Dragons' strength-suppressed ancestor Su Yuan's. Therefore, ancestor Su Yuan originally wanted to retreat, but he changed his mind. He wanted to test Yang Hongwu and join forces with Yang Hongwu. If they could join forces and kill the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons, Yang Hongwu wouldn't be recognized as a member of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. In that case, the position of the Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain would belong to ancestor Su Yuan. Once he became the Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain, no matter how strong Yang Hongwu was, he wouldn't be a match for him. Ancestor Su Yuan's idea was very good. The Emperor of 1,000 Dragons wasn't easy to deal with. If the man in front of him wasn't enough, the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons would join forces and the three of them would be enough. His idea was very good, but Yang Hongwu wouldn't give him such an opportunity. At this moment, Yang Hongwu's arrangement was completed. To Yang Hongwu, ancestor Su Yuan's idea was very tempting. If he could have ancestor Su Yuan as a helper, it would be much easier to deal with the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. After all, ancestor Su Yuan was a powerful local in the 1,000-dragon divine domain. Yang Hongwu was an outsider and didn't know much about the 1,000-dragon divine domain. It would be a lot easier if he had ancestor Su Yuan's help. However, ancestor Su Yuan was a cunning old fox. His methods were extremely cruel. If ancestor Su Yuan witnessed Yang Hongwu's strength, it wouldn't be easy to capture him given his cunning character unless Yang Hongwu became the Lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. However, if that really happened, ancestor Su Yuan would probably choose to leave the 1,000-dragon divine domain. Right now, it was the best time to kill ancestor Su Yuan because he had let down his guard. Yang Hongwu's array formation was also completed. At this moment, it was impossible for ancestor Su Yuan to escape. However, Yang Hongwu still had another worry, and that was the thing in the Yuanlong Mountain, which was the injured dragon. He had to admit that this dragon was very powerful. Even if it was injured and in a deep slumber, it was still very terrifying. Yang Hongwu suspected that this slumbering dragon was related to the Yan Huang tribe. He didn't know the origin of this dragon. Perhaps it was related to him. Yang Hongwu felt that the dragon's bloodline in this dragon was somewhat related to him. There was a sense of closeness. Of course, for cultivators, even real father and son brothers could turn against each other for some supreme treasures or cultivation opportunities. Therefore, this wasn't a big deal. Yang Hongwu was worried that this dragon would be furious after it woke up and attack him. If that happened, it would cause him a lot of trouble. It might even attract the attention of some experts in the 1,000-dragon divine domain. This was something Yang Hongwu didn't want to see. Yang Hongwu didn't want to expose himself yet. Chapter 23:01. What's your decision? Old ancestor Su Yuan said when he saw Yang Hongwu in deep thought. Yang Hongwu was already tempted. In his opinion, cooperating with him was the best way for Yang Hongwu to enter the 1,000-dragon divine domain and establish his own force. Old ancestor Su Yuan would even spend a lot of resources to help Yang Hongwu establish his own force because he wanted to wait for Yang Hongwu to become the 1,000-dragon divine domain until he became the 1,000-dragon divine domain. When Yang Hongwu became the 1,000-dragon divine domain, everything would still belong to him. No matter how powerful Yang Hongwu's force was, it would still belong to him. Everything would be working for him. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. How could Yang Hongwu do as he wished? Although it would be easier for Yang Hongwu to deal with the 1,000-dragon emperor if he cooperated with ancestor Su Yuan, he could still deal with the 1,000-dragon emperor without ancestor Su Yuan. The bloodline of the dragons in his body was strong enough to fight against the 1,000-dragon emperor. Even the dragon emperor was far from being able to contend with him. Even the bloodline of the giant dragon beneath his feet was far inferior to his. Now, Yang Hongwu was thinking of a way to subdue the injured and sleeping giant dragon under his feet. If he could subdue it, it would be of great benefit to him. If this guy really woke up and didn't know what was good for him, Yang Hongwu wouldn't mind killing him and using his Dragon Balls to cultivate Luli. Perhaps he could even cultivate Luli into a universe overlord. At the thought of this, Yang Hongwu made up his mind. If this giant dragon didn't know what was good for him, then sorry, he could just die. It would be a good thing if Luli could control the 1,000-dragon divine domain in the future. At the thought of this, a door seemed to open in Yang Hongwu's mind. Once the 13 divine regions were under his control, he would be able to make each of his women the ruler of a divine region. In this way, he would be able to make each of his women the ruler of a divine region. In this way, the women would have enough strength to protect themselves and could even help him. Moreover, he could also use his identity as the ruler of the entire divine domain to increase the power of the 13 divine domains. If Yang Hongwu became the real ruler of the 13 divine domains, he could mobilize the power of the other divine domains and concentrate it in one divine domain. The strength of the women could reach the pinnacle in an instant. The 13 divine domains seemed to have been prepared for him. Yang Hongwu's thoughts became clearer and clearer. Today's divine domains, the 13 divine domains, he had to obtain them. Anyone who dared to stop him would be his enemy, an enemy that he had to kill. A terrifying light flashed in Yang Hongwu's eyes. At this time, Yang Hongwu's aura had reached a limit and returned to the real peak. He no longer had any worries. As long as the girls were under his protection, there would be no problem at all. As long as he didn't die, the women would be fine. At this moment, Yang Hongwu's cultivation base had a breakthrough. After his state of mind was improved, his cultivation base naturally increased as well. He broke through the half-step Tao Master Realm and entered the Tao Master Realm. The moment Yang Hongwu's cultivation base entered the Tao Master Realm, a terrifying aura erupted in the void. The whole world was celebrating. Outside the void, some ancient experts had also noticed this change. This was extremely shocking. Who is it? Has he broken through to the invincible Overlord realm? Such a void vision could only appear when one broke through to the invincible Overlord realm. The whole void was celebrating. Moreover, they didn't know where the person who broke through to the invincible Overlord realm was. They didn't know where the person was. The other realms, such as those above the invincible Overlord realm, were impossible. There hadn't been a void overlord in the void for countless years. Therefore, the possibility of a void overlord appearing at this time was extremely slim. Moreover, if someone were to break through, if someone broke through to the void overlord realm, how could the void vision be so simple? Only the void vision produced by the invincible overlord realm would be so simple. Another opponent has appeared. The great era has arrived. These ancient experts were conversing with each other. To them, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The emergence of a new invincible overlord signified the beginning of a great era. It was only a matter of time. The current void had been silent for far too long. Truly, a great era. The great era was about to arrive. It was an era full of dangers and opportunities. Some of them had waited for too long. It was too difficult for them to break through to the void overlord realm. Only when the great era arrived would there be such a great opportunity. Yang Hongwu didn't know what was happening in the void. Ancestor Su Yuan didn't know either. However, Ancestor Su Yuan was shocked at this moment. The young man in front of him had broken through. However, the aura he released when he broke through was too shocking. It was too shocking. He was merely breaking through to the Tao Master Realm. How could he cause such a phenomenon? It was impossible. In the 1,000-dragon divine domain, it was not a big deal to break through to the Tao Master Realm. Cultivators who could break through to the Tao Master Realm were all cultivators. There were countless people who could break through to the Tao Sovereign Realm. However, there was no one who could cause a heaven and earth vision when breaking through to the Tao Sovereign Realm. This was the Tao Sovereign Realm. How terrifying was it to cause a heaven and earth vision when breaking through? One had to know that even a native of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain wouldn't be able to cause a phenomenon when breaking through in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, let alone an outsider who was restricted by the laws of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. However, he had managed to do it. This person's talent was too great. The Thousand Dragon Divine Domain might not be able to suppress him. At this moment, Ancestor Su Yuan still didn't know that Yang Hongwu didn't just cause a heaven and earth vision. When he broke through, he caused a void vision. The entire void was shaking. If he knew all this, he wouldn't have dared to scheme against Yang Hongwu at this moment. Now, Ancestor Su Yuan saw how powerful Yang Hongwu was. He was only a Tao master, and he had just broken through to the Tao Sovereign Realm, but he already had such a powerful aura. He was sure that if he was allowed to grow, how terrifying would he be? How terrifying would he be? At that time, even if he became the master of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, he might not be a match for him. Therefore, Ancestor Su Yuan once again wanted to kill the young man in front of him. He wanted to seize his opportunity and bloodline power. This might be more worthwhile than seizing the position of the master of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. Such a powerful bloodline might allow him to break through to the Universe Overlord realm directly. If that was the case, it would be worth it. However, it seemed to be extremely risky. Chapter 2302. If he was careless, he might lose his life. To Su Yuan Ancestor, his life was the most important thing. It would not be worth it if he lost his life because of this. However, it was no longer up to him. Yang Hongwu was the one who made the decision. Once the formation was activated, it was impossible for Su Yuan Ancestor to escape. Whether he could survive or not was a huge problem. It all depended on Yang Hongwu's mood. If Yang Hongwu was in a good mood, he might have a chance to survive. However, if Yang Hongwu did not want him to live, he would definitely die. Interrupt him. Kill him. At this moment, the idea in Su Yuan Ancestor's mind grew wildly like weeds. He could no longer suppress it. He began to accumulate power in his hands and was ready to attack Yang Hongwu. You want to attack me? At this moment, Yang Hongwu suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Su Yuan Ancestor. At this time, old Ancestor Su Yuan was shocked and almost suffered a backlash. However, he snorted and said awkwardly, "Who are you? You're only a Tao master, but you've triggered a vision of heaven and earth. You've really opened my eyes. You want to kill me, so you're going to die here today. I won't say anything meaningless to a dead man." Yang Hongwu raised his right hand slightly and condensed a beam of energy. How arrogant! Even if you've triggered a vision of heaven and earth, so what? You're only a Tao master. The reason why I'm so polite to you is because of the person behind you. However, you're so insensible and arrogant. You don't take me seriously. Do you know that you're courting death? At this moment, Su Yuan Ancestor was not angry. Instead, he laughed. No matter how talented this boy was, he was only a Tao master. There was a huge gap between him and a half-step universe overlord. He had never heard of anyone who could compete with a half-step universe overlord with the cultivation of a Tao master. Even the first controller of Thousand Dragon Divine Region could not do it. Besides, Yang Hongwu was from another domain. As long as the person behind him was not present, he was confident that he could kill this boy. After killing this boy, he could hide, and the person behind Yang Hongwu would not be able to find him. He was confident that he could do this. However, he was worried that the person behind Yang Hongwu might have some powerful means or trump cards to protect him. This was what he was worried about. He would not believe that the person behind such a genius did not have any means to protect him. If it were him, If he had such a talented descendant, he would definitely protect him well and not give others any chance to take advantage of him. Courting death? Who is courting death? At this moment, Yang Hongwu had already set up a formation. Therefore, he released his powerful aura and bloodline power without reservation. The reason why Yang Hongwu did this was not only because of Su Yuan ancestor, but also because of the giant dragon under his feet. This giant dragon had already awakened because of the void anomaly caused by Yang Hongwu's breakthrough. It would be strange if it did not sense such a huge commotion. Therefore, when Yang Hongwu's breakthrough triggered the void anomaly, this injured giant dragon had already awakened. This giant dragon was called Xianyuan Yinglong. If Yang Hongwu heard this name, he would be very surprised. However, at this time, although this giant dragon had woken up, he still pretended that he hadn't woken up and pretended that he didn't see anything. However, Yang Hongwu's aura and the pressure of his bloodline power had shocked Xianyuan Yinglong. He was very familiar with this bloodline power. He could even feel that it came from the same source as him. However, it was of a much higher level than his bloodline power. This shocked him to the core. In fact, in the 13 divine regions, there was another region besides the 1,000-dragon divine region that possessed the powerful bloodline of dragons. However, the bloodline power was definitely not this powerful. This guy was not from the 13 divine regions. He came from the extraterritorial region. Xianyuan Yinglong even thought of that place. Only that place could possibly have such a powerful bloodline of dragons. Moreover, this was only a human, not a real dragon. It was impossible to have such a human with the bloodline of dragons in other places. Only that place could have such a bloodline of dragons. Do you really think that a half-step universe overlord is invincible in the 1,000-dragon divine domain? Let me tell you, it's impossible. In the 1,000-dragon divine domain, even universe overlords are not invincible. You're just a half-step universe overlord. You're too weak. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as stepping on an ant. I won't feel any pressure at all. Do you know that? As he spoke, Yang Hongwu's aura became even more terrifying with the help of the formation. This caused ancestor Su Yuan to be extremely terrified. The pressure that Yang Hongwu was emitting right now was not only the pressure of the dragon bloodline, but also an even more terrifying pressure against the power of the Devil Dao. It was the nemesis of the power of the Devil Dao. 2 waves of pressure burst out, making it hard for old ancestor Su Yuan to breathe. It was too strong, too terrifying. Even if a cultivator in the Tao Master Realm had a pure bloodline, it was impossible for him to cross a realm and make him feel so uncomfortable. At the same time, Xianyuan Yinglong was also shocked. He felt that he had been imprisoned. His power had been imprisoned by Yang Hongwu, and he had become a part of the formation. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong finally understood how terrifying the young man standing on top of him was. He had silently set up such a powerful formation, and this formation had actually used him as the eye of the formation. He had merged into it, making it impossible for him to control his own power. Although he was injured and could not exert the power of a universe overlord, he was still a universe overlord. Those half-step universe overlords were no match for him. In the 13 deity regions, only that guy was qualified to fight with him. But now, he was so vulnerable in front of a Tao master and was imprisoned. Although it was because he had been in a deep sleep, it was still terrifying. Ant? Upon hearing this, Su Yuan ancestor trembled all over. This instantly crushed his will to fight. Yes, at this moment, he had no power to resist at all. In the face of a Tao master, he did not even have the power to resist. If he was not an ant, what was he? He was too weak. He was so weak that he could not withstand a single blow. He was really an ant. This sentence crushed his state of mind. Chapter 2303. Just a few words had made old ancestor Su Yuan lose his will to fight. This was what it meant to subdue an enemy without a fight. Seeing this scene, Zi Xintong and Lu Yu were surprised. They didn't expect that Yang Hongwu's cultivation realm had broken through. The invisible pressure he brought to them had also become much stronger. This was really surprising for the two women. This was because Yang Hongwu had completely shaken off his previous state and entered a new realm. The two women were very happy about this. However, although old ancestor Su Yuan had lost his mind at this time, he wasn't the kind of person who would commit suicide. He valued his life very much. It was impossible for him to die like this. Therefore, it didn't take long for old ancestor Su Yuan to regain his senses. This made Yang Hongwu a little surprised. Old ancestor Su Yuan himself also knew that he was no match for Yang Hongwu at all. He knew that if Yang Hongwu really wanted to kill him, he could definitely do it. He couldn't escape now because he had tried, but he couldn't break through this space because this space had been completely sealed. If Yang Hongwu really wanted to kill him, then he would die without a doubt. If he wanted to live, there was only one way, which was to surrender. Only by surrendering could he have a chance to live. Otherwise, he would die. What do you want? Old ancestor Su Yuan looked at Yang Hongwu. He wasn't willing to completely put down his status and beg for mercy because he knew that if he surrendered now without any resistance, then after he surrendered, he wouldn't be useful at all. He wouldn't be put in an important position and would become a dispensable existence. This was something he couldn't tolerate. It was one thing to be controlled by others, but if he became a dispensable person without the slightest power, this was simply worse than killing him. After all, it was hard for him to accept the fact that he had become someone else's servant from a high and mighty patriarch without any power. Surrender or die. Yang Hongwu's tone was very domineering. He didn't give anyone a chance to refute. This sentence was not only for old ancestor Su Yuan, but also for the giant dragon under his feet. This giant dragon was now trapped by him. Although he still had the strength to resist being trapped in the formation, if he wanted to forcefully break through the formation, then Yang Hongwu had a way to deal with him. For Yang Hongwu, he wanted people who were obedient and helpful to him. The others were dispensable. For example, if ancestor Su Yuan hadn't been a powerful native of the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm and was extremely familiar with the place, he wouldn't have even considered keeping him alive. If ancestor Su Yuan knew what was good for him, he would have waited for Luo Yunyang to take control of him. After controlling the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm, he could give him a chance to reincarnate. However, if he didn't know what was good for him and didn't change in the slightest, then only death was left. These were the two options Yang Hongwu gave him. Everything depended on old ancestor Su Yuan. However, no matter what, old ancestor Su Yuan would have to die in the end unless he was of great help to him. That was another matter. Yang Hongwu wasn't the kind of person who would get rid of a donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. If old ancestor Su Yuan really changed in the future, and was loyal to him and of great help to him, then he would certainly give him a chance to change. In fact, if he reincarnated, he would be able to reincarnate. If he were to recultivate, it would be more beneficial to him. Of course, the prerequisite was that Yang Hongwu had to give his reincarnated body great benefit. After all, the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm would be under Yang Hongwu's control in the future. If he reincarnated in the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm, he would definitely be under Yang Hongwu's control. Now, Yang Hongwu was waiting for old ancestor Su Yuan and the giant dragon to make a choice. I admit that your bloodline power is very powerful, but you're only a Tao master after all. I'm a half-step universe overlord. If we really fight and fight to the death, you won't gain anything. I've said that if we join forces, you'll gain great benefits. I can help you kill the Emperor of Thousand Dragons and help you become the ruler of the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm. Isn't that enough? You want to take a mile after taking an inch? Old ancestor Su Yuan looked at Yang Hongwu and narrowed his eyes. This was the feeling of being threatened. It was a very unpleasant and uncomfortable feeling. However, he was also very aggrieved because he knew that he wasn't strong enough. He was no match for the man in front of him. If the man in front of him really wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be able to die together with him. So, you don't want to surrender? Before Yang Hongwu could say anything, Zi Xintong said, "If you don't want to surrender, then you can only die. I'll fulfill your wish." After saying that, Zi Xintong raised her hand, and a force rushed toward old ancestor Su Yuan's forehead. Zi Xintong didn't use her full strength in this attack. It was only a probing attack. However, it was still very powerful for the ancestor right now. Normally, he would be able to block this attack, and wouldn't even be able to do so. He wouldn't have used much strength. However, his cultivation was suppressed now. Therefore, although this attack didn't seem strong, it was very deadly for old ancestor Su Yuan. Although it wasn't enough to kill him, it could seriously injure him. Old ancestor Su Yuan couldn't just sit there and wait for death. He raised his hand and a light appeared. This light was a round shield, and it blocked Zi Xintong's attack. However, the round shield shattered instantly after blocking the attack. Old ancestor Su Yuan was sent flying a few hundred meters away by this powerful force. Zi Xintong didn't show any mercy. She chased after old ancestor Su Yuan as if she wouldn't give up until she killed him. Seeing Zi Xintong's attitude, old ancestor Su Yuan rolled and crawled to dodge while shouting, "Stop, stop now." However, Zi Xintong wasn't willing to listen. If Yang Hongwu didn't say anything, she wouldn't have stopped. Old ancestor Su Yuan dodged Zi Xintong's fatal attack once again. However, he was still injured by the strong wind. There were streaks of blood on his face, his hair was scattered and his clothes were torn. He no longer looked like an old ancestor. He was clearly a beggar now. Su Tai was dumbfounded. How was this the old ancestor he had imagined? This was more like a beggar. Chapter 2304. Stop it. At this time, Yang Hongwu opened his mouth. He wanted to know what old ancestor Su Yuan was going to do. After all, old ancestor Su Yuan was still useful to Yang Hongwu. At least, as the old ancestor of the Void Demon clan, he was the local tyrant of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. When the time comes, Yang Hongwu would need old ancestor Su Yuan's help to unify the forces of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. He couldn't just have the Emperor of 1,000 dragons, right? The Emperor of 1,000 dragons was the ruler of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. When the time comes, would the Emperor of 1,000 dragons still be willing to submit to him? Yang Hongwu didn't believe that the Emperor of 1,000 dragons would be willing to work for him. The Emperor of 1,000 dragons was a true dragon. Moreover, he was the Emperor of dragons. How could he submit to others? At that level, he would rather die than submit to others. Zi Xintong heard Yang Hongwu's words. Although she wasn't happy, she still stopped. Since Yang Hongwu had spoken, Zi Xintong would listen to him even if she wanted to kill old ancestor Su Yuan. In fact, old ancestor Su Yuan was an old ancestor of the Void Demon clan. He was stronger than her. If it wasn't for Yang Hongwu, she wouldn't be his opponent. If she killed old ancestor Su Yuan, she would be able to obtain a part of his devil origin. This would be beneficial to her. After all, she was also a member of the Saint Devil clan, a supreme devil clan. Do you have anything to say? Will you submit or die? Yang Hongwu looked at old ancestor Su Yuan. At this time, this old man had completely lost his sharpness. He had lost his battle strength and was like a stray dog. The battered and exhausted old ancestor Su Yuan looked at Yang Hongwu. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fear. His heart was already dead. He knew that he really didn't have any choice this time. Unless he was willing to die, He absolutely didn't want to die. If he could survive, he wouldn't hesitate even if he had to struggle at death's door. I submit. When Ancestor Su Yuan said these words, he seemed to have used up all of his strength. As soon as he said these words, he became Yang Hongwu's servant. From a high and mighty ancestor to a slave, he no longer had any freedom. He no longer had the feeling of being high and mighty. He was now under the control of others. His life and death were no longer in his own hands. If you choose to fight to the death, you won't even have the chance to be reincarnated. As for perishing together with me, that's impossible. Your choice is very wise. If you perform well, I don't mind giving you a chance to soar into the sky and become a universe overlord. I'm a person who wipes away my enemies like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaf. I won't show any mercy, but I'm very generous to my subordinate. I'll never mistreat my own people. Of course, the premise is that you have to do a good job to satisfy me and make enough contributions. If you submit to me and don't work for me wholeheartedly, but only to save your life for a while, then you'll have to bear the consequences. When Yang Hongwu said these words, he didn't hide his killing intent at all. Su Yuan Ancestor had already endured this horrible qi power once. This time, he was already injured. In the face of such a powerful qi power, he directly knelt down. He couldn't bear it at all. He really knew the gap between him and Yang Hongwu. Although this young man was young and his cultivation was only at the Tao Master realm, his strength and fighting strength were beyond ordinary people's estimation. Even those so-called geniuses and so-called peerless talents were not worth mentioning in front of him. Even the reincarnations of some ancient experts were nothing in front of this young man. This young man in front of him was probably not even 1,000 years old, yet his strength was already so powerful. Maybe he was the reincarnation of an ancient overlord. Only such a demon-level character would be so terrifying and tyrannical. No. At this moment, Su Yuan Ancestor was very obedient. Without waiting for Yang Hongwu to say more, he directly opened his mind and soul and let Yang Hongwu plant a brand on his soul. This meant that as long as Yang Hongwu wanted, he could directly make him suffer a fate worse than death and scatter his soul. In fact, for some experts, it was not a big deal to let others plant a brand on their soul. When they were strong enough, they could erase the brand. However, Yang Hongwu was different. No one could break the brand he planted, and it was impossible to erase it. Unless Yang Hongwu was willing, no one could do it. Once the brand was touched, it would directly explode and burn the whole soul along with the great way he cultivated. This was the truly terrifying part. Yang Hongwu was quite satisfied when he saw that the ancestor Su Yuan was so tactful. After planting the mark, the ancestor Su Yuan stood aside obediently. Yang Hongwu was not stingy and directly threw an elixir to the ancestor Su Yuan. After the ancestor Su Yuan received the elixir, he was a little shocked at first. However, he soon returned to normal. For a monster like Yang Hongwu, a mere elixir was very normal. Even if it was a high-grade elixir, it would not be strange for him to take it out. At this moment, Su Yuan Ancestor had become Yang Hongwu's servant and fangs. However, it was not a good thing for Su Tai. Su Yuan Ancestor had taken the initiative to release his mind and become Yang Hongwu's servant, but Su Tai did not do so. Therefore, Su Tai was very flustered at this time. Even an ancestor like Su Yuan Ancestor could only be Yang Hongwu's servant. What about him? What was he? He was afraid that he was not even qualified to be a servant. At this moment, Su Tai was completely flustered. If he was useless, he would be disposed of. This was how he treated others in the past. He would dispose of people who were of no help or use to him directly. Therefore, Su Tai was very flustered and worried at this time. He was worried that he would be disposed of and killed directly. However, he did not dare to make a sound, because he knew that if he made a sound at this time, it would be tantamount to courting death. At this time, Yang Hongwu naturally did not care about a mere Su Tai. In Yang Hongwu's eyes, Su Tai was just an ant. He did not have so much time to care about this trivial matter. Su Tai's matter was naturally handed over to Lu Yu to deal with. Lu Yu and Su Yuan both came from Earth, and had special feelings for the Yan Huang clan. Su Yuan's ancestor was useful, but Su Tai was different now. Although Su Tai was not the person behind the scenes, he was also the direct executioner. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2305. For Yang Hongwu, now that he had dealt with Su Yuan's old ancestor, the most important thing was to deal with the dragon. Yang Hongwu knew that the dragon had already woken up. He had already integrated the dragon into his formation and made it the eye of the formation. How could Yang Hongwu not sense its awakening? It was impossible for this guy to escape from his control just like that. The dragon was an extremely cunning old man. Moreover, he used to be high and mighty. Naturally, he wouldn't be willing to submit to Yi Shiwen. "You're awake. Come out. Stop pretending," Yang Hongwu said. As soon as Yang Hongwu said this, everyone present was slightly stunned. Was there anyone else here? They didn't see it. Even Lu Yu and Zi Xintong were shocked. There was someone else here? They didn't even sense it. Was the other party that powerful? The two ladies weren't the only ones who were shocked. Ancestor Su Yuan was just as shocked. As the ancestor of the Void Demon tribe in the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm, his strength was high and mighty. Although he had been completely suppressed by Yang Hongwu, he didn't think that there was anyone in the Thousand Dragon Divine Realm that he couldn't sense. Was he really a frog at the bottom of a well? Was there someone else in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain that he didn't know about? That shouldn't be possible. However, since Yang Hongwu said so, he couldn't help but believe it. Yang Hongwu could not help but laugh coldly when he saw that the dragon did not react to his words. He stomped his foot and controlled the formation to extract the energy of the dragon. This time, Yang Hongwu was going to extract the source energy of the dragon. This time, Xianyuan Yinglong could not hold on any longer and had no choice but to appear. After a flash of light, an imposing man appeared in front of everyone. "Little guy, you're not bad. However, it's not good to bully an old man like this. You have a bloodline that I'm familiar with. Whose descendant are you?" Xianyuan Yinglong looked at Yang Hongwu and said, "Maybe I know your family's elders? Don't try to worm your way into being friends with me." Yang Hongwu looked at him and said, "You should have heard what I said just now. Submit or die." "Little fella, although your strength is not bad, I am not this little fella from the Void Demon clan. It won't be easy for you to make me submit. Although my strength has not recovered, it is not impossible for me to deal with you. It's just that I am very familiar with your bloodline, so I didn't make a fuss about you using my power. However, if you continue to be so rude, don't blame me for being impolite and not giving face to your elders," Xianyuan Yinglong said coldly. He was like a tiger that had fallen from its lair and was now being bullied by a dog. He was an invincible overlord at the pinnacle, but his cultivation level had dropped and he was injured. He did not expect to be bullied and threatened by a mere Dao master. This made him very angry, but there was nothing he could do. His injuries had not fully recovered, and his cultivation level was far from its peak. With his current strength, he could not even deal with an ordinary universe overlord, let alone an invincible overlord who was even more powerful than him. The injuries he had suffered in the previous battle were so severe that he hadn't recovered even after so many years. However, he didn't want to enter the void. Once he entered the void, he would be hunted down by his enemies. At that time, he might even lose his life, let alone recover his cultivation. Therefore, he had no choice but to hide in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. The 13 divine domains were a very special place, and the 1,000-dragon divine domain was the most suitable place for him. That was why he had hidden himself in the 1,000-dragon divine domain to recuperate. Countless years had passed and the 1,000-dragon divine domain had gone through countless wars. It had undergone countless changes and had changed many masters. However, no one had been able to discover his true identity. What he hadn't expected was that at the critical moment when he was recovering from his injuries, someone had actually discovered his existence and used his power to their advantage. More importantly, the power of this person's bloodline was very familiar to him. It was of a much higher level than his. There was only one possibility. This person came from that place. Only the people from that place had a higher level of dragon bloodline than him. Only the people from that place could be so terrifying. They could borrow the power of the formation to extract his power and suppress him greatly. My elders. Yang Hongwu smiled and said, don't try to worm your way into being friends with me. My elders are ordinary people. Therefore, it's meaningless for you to threaten me with my elders. If you don't surrender, don't blame me for being impolite. As for what you've said, you can show me what you've got. However, there's one thing I want to tell you. If you can't come out unscathed after using your means, you'll die. Yang Hongwu squinted his eyes and his killing intent erupted. He used his powerful aura and the might of the dragon's bloodline to the extreme. The 9 Heavens divine dragon technique was activated crazily, and the formation started to devour the power of the dragons around it. Especially when the devouring power included Xianyuan Yinglong's power. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong's face changed drastically. He realized that his power was out of control. Even the supreme treasure on his body could not suppress it. He felt that his power was like a dam that had been opened. It was leaking out crazily, and there was no way to stop it. The loss of his strength made Xianyuan Yinglong realize that he could not compete with this so-called junior in front of him. His means were too terrifying. The cultivation technique that he practiced had already reached the limit of suppressing him, making him unable to put up any resistance. Is this the reincarnation of the Void Dragon ancestor? At this moment, there was only one thought in Xianyuan Yinglong's mind. As far as he knew, there was absolutely no one who could do this. Even the owner of that place could not do this. It was impossible for a Tao master to extract his power so easily and make him unable to resist. Who the hell are you? I, Xianyuan Yinglong, admit defeat. At that moment, Xianyuan Yinglong had no choice but to lower his head. With such strength, how could he fight against Lin Fan? This was simply cheating. Since he could not defeat him, he might as well submit to him. After all, this guy possessed the bloodline of the dragon tribe. Moreover, it was the supreme bloodline of the dragon tribe. If he could obtain a drop of his dragon tribe blood essence, perhaps his injuries could be healed. Xianyuan Yinglong thought. Xianyuan Yinglong? Yang Hongwu squinted his eyes. What was the relationship between you and the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan? Hearing the name Xianyuan Yinglong, Yang Hongwu could not help but think of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. Yang Hongwu naturally had special feelings for the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, although he had not seen the real Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. Chapter 2306. Yellow Emperor. Xianyuan Yinglong's body trembled when he heard the name. It was a familiar yet strange name. That was a long time ago, when he had not yet grown up. He was just a small dragon. In that magnificent era, there were 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors in the Eldritch world. In fact, that world was very special. It made him very puzzled. Every person who came out of that world was very powerful and had terrifying talent. Their speed of growth was very fast. In fact, many experts and powerful Void Overlords came from that world. Many Void Overlords used that world as a template to build many universes. These universes were almost identical to that universe, but in fact there was still a huge gap, as if something was missing. There was no doubt that the Yen Huang universe and the eldritch world created by these experts were all failures. Only that world was the real Yen Huang universe, the eldritch world. In fact, the 13 divine realms were also universes created by an expert. However, this expert did not clone exactly like the other experts. Instead, he changed and introduced other things to give birth to the 13 divine realms. The 13 divine realms were very special because this expert was much stronger than the other experts. His inheritance was in the 13 divine realms. However, Xianyuan Yinglong had only heard about it. When he first entered the Thousand Dragon divine realm, he was not suppressed by the 13 divine realms like the others. He guessed that it might be because of his serious injuries. However, he later found out that this was not the reason. Perhaps it was because of his bloodline. He guessed that the expert who created the 13 divine realms might have come from the real Yen Huang universe, the eldritch world. It was because he came from the same place as that expert that the 13 divine realms did not suppress him. Of course I know him. He's my boss. Xianyuan Yinglong said, Unfortunately, I don't know where he is now. You're from the eldritch world? Yang Hongwu looked at him and asked. If I'm not wrong, you're also from the eldritch world, right? Xianyuan Yinglong looked at Yang Hongwu and said, Since we are from the same hometown, you don't have to make things difficult for me, do you? When Xianyuan Yinglong saw Yang Hongwu's reaction, he couldn't help but think that Yang Hongwu didn't need to make him his servant because they were from the same hometown. After all, Xianyuan Yinglong didn't like being a servant. As for being the underling of this lad, that was something worth considering. This lad should have an extremely high status within the desolate continent. There was a high chance that he was the descendant of some powerful being. You want me to let you go? Yang Hongwu looked at Xianyuan Yinglong and frowned. Although Xianyuan Yinglong was from the same hometown as him, he had nothing to do with him. Even if they came from the same place, Xianyuan Yinglong was from the untainted land, while Yang Hongwu was from the earth. There was a difference between the earth and the untainted land. Therefore, it didn't matter whether they were from the same hometown or not. Yang Hongwu wouldn't let Xianyuan Yinglong go just because of this. This guy wasn't easy to deal with. If Xianyuan Yinglong refused to submit, even if he was really from the same hometown as Yang Hongwu and was really the legendary Yinglong, he would have to die. Yang Hongwu would never let him go. If he killed Xianyuan Yinglong, seized his dragon pearl, and seized his great Tao of the universe, he would be able to benefit Lu Li greatly. She might even be able to break through to become a universe overlord. Therefore, no matter what, Yang Hongwu would not let him go unless he was willing to submit and pledge his allegiance to him. For the sake of Yellow Emperor, Xianyuan Yinglong said with a nod. Xianyuan Yinglong nodded. He looked at Yang Hongwu and said, Of course, I won't let you suffer losses. If you let me go, I'll give you a big gift. This is because you're from the same hometown as me. Otherwise, I'd rather die than give it to you. Hearing this, Yang Hongwu was a little interested. However, Yang Hongwu still wouldn't let him go. He said, I'm a little interested in the so-called big gift, but it's impossible for me to let you go. As I said, you have no choice but to surrender or die. You can only choose one of the two. If I'm satisfied with your gift, I'll consider helping you recover your cultivation. Yang Hongwu could see that the bloodline in Xianyuan Yinglong's body had begun to dry up. Although he was a dragon, his injuries were so serious that his bloodline began to dry up. His great Tao of the universe was also on the verge of collapse. If this continued, he would definitely die. It was absolutely impossible for him to recover his cultivation. The key to his recovery was his bloodline. As long as he could reactivate the power of his bloodline and bring out the vitality of his bloodline, he would be able to recover from his injuries and recover his cultivation. Otherwise, no matter how many treasures and great opportunities he obtained, He wouldn't be able to recover from his injuries unless he gave up his bloodline and really possessed someone else. You can help me recover from my injuries and my cultivation? Xianyuan Yinglong looked at Yang Hongwu in astonishment. He was surprised and happy at the same time, but he couldn't believe it. After all, he knew his situation. It was very difficult for him to recover his cultivation completely unless a void overlord helped him. Otherwise, there was only one place that could help him recover, and that was the ancestral dragon pool in the untainted land where he was born. However, he couldn't find the untainted land now. Once someone came out of the untainted land, he couldn't return to the original untainted land. Even if he found another untainted land, it was definitely not the original untainted land. It seemed that there were many untainted continents in the Endless Hollow, but the original untainted land couldn't be found. This was a very special and strange point. Even those experts who came out of the primitive continent and reached the Void Overlord realm couldn't find the original primitive continent or the original Yanhuang universe. This was also a very strange point for them. When they reached that level of cultivation and couldn't make any further progress, they wanted to go back to the original place to look for opportunities to break through. However, no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find the original primitive world or the original primitive continent. Only then did they truly understand how powerful and special the primeval continent, the primeval world, that they were born in, was. Of course you can. The reason why you can't recover from your injuries and cultivation is that your bloodline has begun to dry up because of your injuries. If you don't treat it, your bloodline will dry up completely and you will die. How can you recover from your injuries and cultivation then? Your bloodline is your foundation. Yang Hongwu said. Chapter 2307. You can help me restore my bloodline origin? Xianyuan Yinglong looked at Yang Hongwu. If he could really help him restore his bloodline origin, then what was his origin? It didn't matter if he didn't know this. For Xianyuan Yinglong, recovering his bloodline origin was very important. He didn't want to die. He already knew that his bloodline origin was damaged. He came from the untainted world, where he had fought in the great battle of untainted world. This was because he had damaged his origin and bloodline origin. This was something he only learned later. Because he couldn't find the way back, it was impossible for his bloodline origin to recover. His bloodline origin was damaged, so his bloodline origin had dried up. This was the biggest problem. As long as he could restore his bloodline origin, all of this wouldn't be a problem. His cultivation could even reach a higher level and break through to the Void Overlord realm. The upper world. Ever since he entered the Void, he had been very emotional. If his bloodline origin hadn't been damaged, he could also break through to the Void Overlord realm. He wouldn't just be an invincible overlord. He wouldn't have been severely injured and trapped here. His bloodline origin had dried up and he wouldn't have to sit and wait for death. Now that he had the opportunity, he certainly wouldn't give it up. However, he didn't really believe the young man in front of him. His strength was still too weak, even though this young man might have come from the same place as him. In fact, his talent was even more terrifying and powerful, especially his bloodline. Jane. He had never seen such a thing before. He had thought that the young man in front of him might be the origin of the Yanhuang universe in the untainted world. He might even be the illegitimate son of the Yanhuang universe's master. However, his cultivation level was still a little weak after all. If you can really restore my bloodline origin, I won't mind surrendering to you, Xianyuan Yinglong said. Yang Hongwu nodded and pointed at Xianyuan Yinglong. A drop of essence blood entered between Xianyuan Yinglong's eyebrows. This drop of essence blood was Yang Hongwu's bloodline origin. In fact, this drop of bloodline origin was not a great loss to Yang Hongwu. In exchange for a great being at the level of a universe overlord as a servant, it was absolutely worth it. Moreover, Xian Yuan Yinglong seemed to be more than just an ordinary universe overlord. If his cultivation could be restored to its peak state, he would most likely become a universe overlord. He might even become an invincible overlord. He was very clear about the strength of invincible overlords. Half-step invincible overlords like Furukra Daizuan and Slaughter Grand Monarch, they couldn't even withstand a single blow from an invincible overlord. What a powerful bloodline power! The essence blood of dragons. This is the essence blood of the ancestor dragons. Xian Yuan Yinglong roared in his heart after he got the drop of blood essence. After the drop of blood essence entered his body, it began to repair his injured bloodline origin. The speed of recovery was astonishing. Of course, when the drop of blood essence began to repair his bloodline origin, it also formed a strange curse seal in his body. In other words, it was a contract. The appearance of this contract meant that Xian Yuan Yinglong was a bloodline origin. This meant that his life was in the hands of Yang Hongwu. If he dared to harm Yang Hongwu or betray him, he would definitely die. This was because of his bloodline origin. It could be said that at this moment, Xian Yuan Yinglong's bloodline origin came from Yang Hongwu. As long as Yang Hongwu wanted to, he could control Xian Yuan Yinglong's bloodline origin. In this way, Xian Yuan Yinglong would be powerless to resist. Although this feeling made him very uncomfortable, it wasn't impossible to solve this problem. As long as his cultivation realm reached a limit and his strength reached a certain level, he would be able to break free from the bloodline origin. Then, all of this would be fine. It was a problem. Of course, he knew that it would be extremely difficult. The man in front of him was extremely talented. He had come from the untainted world to the void. His cultivation speed was incomparable to that of an ordinary person. Even he couldn't match up to him. Moreover, he was only a Dao master now, but his combat strength was so terrifying. It was as if he was the favorite of the void. Who could compare with him? In the void, there was probably no genius more outstanding than him. He clearly knew that anyone who came from the untainted world was extremely talented in cultivation. It could be said that only a few races in the void could match the bloodline origin of the untainted world. Currently, the strongest experts in the void, especially the void overlords, were born in the untainted world. However, these void overlords seem to have already left this side of the void. Even his boss, the Yellow Emperor, should have already become a void overlord and left this side of the void. As for where he went, no one knew. After doing all this, Zi Xintong looked at Yang Hongwu and asked, "Who is this person? Why do you think so highly of him?" "We can say that we are from the same hometown," Lu Yu said. "At this time, we should be from the same place. It's just that he is our senior." "That's right." Yang Hongwu nodded and said, "Since we're from the same hometown and he's my senior, I'll spare him this time and give him a chance to work for me as my subordinate, as he's a universe overlord with a terrifying aura." Zi Xintong looked at Xian Yuan Yinglong, who had just recovered his power, and was very surprised. In God domain, the power of universe overlords will be suppressed. Why is that? Why do I feel that he is not suppressed at all? If he goes back on his word now, won't we be in big trouble? Zi Xintong was a little worried when she saw Xian Yuan Yinglong's power becoming more and more terrifying. This was the power of a universe overlord. If he could unleash the power of a universe overlord in this side of the God domain, what if he went back on his word? Could he defeat him? This was a huge problem. "It's okay." When Yang Hongwu heard this, he smiled and said, "Your worries are unnecessary. He has refined that drop of essence blood of mine. This means that his life and death is in my hands. Moreover, he is from the dragon tribe and he is using my blood to recover from his injuries. If he dares to betray me, I will directly extract his blood, and then he will die." Yang Hongwu was very confident about this. In fact, Yang Hongwu had such a memory in his mind not long ago. He didn't have such a method, but these memories appeared in his mind inexplicably. They seemed to be inherited memories, or perhaps they were the memories of his previous life awakened. Chapter 2308. I've recovered. After a long while, Xianyuan Yinglong recovered. His aura had reached its peak. Although his cultivation had not fully recovered, his injuries had mostly healed. Xianyuan Yinglong was shocked by the speed of his recovery. After the drop of essence blood entered his body, it had awakened his exhausted bloodline. Moreover, the speed of his recovery was particularly shocking. This drop of essence blood was already so terrifying. This was the power of bloodline. Xianyuan Yinglong wondered how terrifying this young man in front of him was. How powerful was his bloodline power? If Xianyuan Yinglong could obtain such a bloodline, how powerful would he be? Xianyuan Yinglong was afraid that no one in this void would be a match for him. However, as soon as Xianyuan Yinglong had this thought, he immediately threw it away. It was too terrifying. He absolutely couldn't have such a thought. He knew that if he dared to go against Xianyuan Yinglong and tried to seize his bloodline, he would be courting death. There was no way he could survive. Master, my cultivation has mostly recovered. Thank you for your kindness. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong had sincerely surrendered. He knelt in front of Yang Hongwu with great respect and sincerity. Good. This is great. The Thousand Dragon Divine Domain is very important to me. You are a universe overlord. You must have been in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain for a long time. How much do you know about it? Yang Hongwu said, looking at Xianyuan Yinglong. Xianyuan Yinglong was, after all, a universe overlord. Although he had yet to fully recover his cultivation, his current combat power was so strong that no one in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain would be a match for him other than the Emperor of Thousand Dragons and the Master of Thousand Dragons. After all, he was a universe overlord. Yang Hongwu was surprised that Xianyuan Yinglong did not seem to be suppressed by the laws of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. He seemed to be able to exert the strength of a universe overlord. Could it be that Xianyuan Yinglong also controlled a part of the origin of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain? Or could it be that the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain was related to him? Regardless of the situation, he only needed to find out the truth. The Thousand Dragon Divine Domain had to be under his control. Not only the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, but also the 13 divine domains. He had to integrate them. However, it was still a little difficult to integrate all of them. If there was a universe overlord in the Thousand Dragon Domain, there might be other universe overlords in other domains as well. If a universe overlord like Xianyuan Yinglong was not suppressed by the laws of the Thousand Dragon Domain, then what about the other domains? Was there anyone who wasn't suppressed by the laws and could unleash the power of a universe overlord? This was what Yang Hongwu was most worried about. There did not seem to be any universe overlords in the Eternal God domain that he controlled. However, Yang Hongwu was not sure. Perhaps they had hidden their cultivation so that he could not detect them? This was not impossible. After all, if a great being at the level of a universe overlord possessed a special great path of the universe, it was not surprising that he could not discover it. After all, his cultivation level was still too low. Even though he had made a breakthrough in his cultivation level, he was still only at the level of a Tao Master. There was still a huge gap between him and a true great being. He was still 2 levels away from the level of a universe overlord. Above the level of a Tao Master, there was a great Tao Master, and above the great Tao Master, there was a universe overlord. Therefore, Yang Hongwu did not dare to be too unscrupulous. After all, in this world or in this void there were many strong masters. Although he could challenge those at a higher level, He was nothing in front of a real master. It couldn't be helped. Yang Hongwu himself wanted to be arrogant and unbridled, but his strength didn't allow him to do so. If it was back on Earth, he might be able to be unbridled and unbridled. However, he absolutely couldn't do so in this place. Even in the original ancient desolate continent, he could still be arrogant, but not here. Actually, I don't know much about the Thousand Dragon domain. When I was seriously injured and entered the God domain, I chose the Thousand Dragon domain to heal my wounds. After entering here, I fell into a deep sleep. In fact, I don't know much about the Thousand Dragon domain. However, it is not that simple. If I'm not wrong, the real master of the Thousand Dragon domain should be a supreme master, or rather, the master of the entire God domain should be a powerful void overlord. The entire God domain should be waiting for the arrival of its master, or rather, the arrival of its future master. I suspect that young master should be the person that the entire God domain is waiting for, Xianyuan Yinglong said and flattered. Upon hearing this, Yang Hongwu frowned. This guy spoke as if there was nothing to say. He could even guess this. It was useless. No wonder this guy came from the same place as him. He actually knew how to flatter. However, it was quite pleasant to listen to. It was no wonder that those emperors liked courtiers who were eloquent and knew how to flatter. This was not without reason. Who would be willing to listen to such harsh and unpleasant words? Although honest words were unpleasant to the ears, there were times when it was annoying to listen to too much. You're good at talking, but you don't have any useful information. I want to know the situation of the Thousand Dragon domain, not these so-called guesses. I don't want to listen to your flattery. Yang Hongwu looked at Xianyuan Yinglong and said, "This, I really don't know." However, the Thousand Dragon domain should be a world created by a powerful dragon. Xianyuan Yinglong said, "When I was chased by my enemies, I was seriously injured and on the verge of death. I didn't think too much about it. Speaking of which, I have to thank young master for waking me up. If it wasn't for young master, I'm afraid that I would still be in a deep sleep." After hearing this, Yang Hongwu couldn't help but sigh. Was it good or bad to have such a follower? Yang Hongwu was starting to doubt himself. "Young master, I know the situation of the Thousand Dragon domain the best. If you have any questions, you can ask me." At this time, Ancestor Su Yuan hurriedly said. Yang Hongwu glanced at him and said, "What you know is only on the surface. You don't know the details. There's a powerful aura in the Thousand Dragon domain. It's a powerful existence. Do you know who it is?" This. Ancestor Su Yuan felt very awkward after hearing Yang Hongwu's words. He didn't say anything else. Yang Hongwu was telling the truth. In his opinion, there weren't many people in the Thousand Dragon domain who could fight against him. However, there was an expert in front of him. Although he was injured, his strength was far beyond his imagination. Chapter 2309. Well, since you don't know, let's put it aside for now. What's important now is that you have something that I want, Yang Hongwu said. There was a space in the Cloud Dragon Mountain. Yang Hongwu had originally thought that Xianyuan Yinglong had created this space, but now it seemed that this was not the case. It was probably because of the Yen Huang Nine Dragons seal. Yang Hongwu did not know if this Yen Huang Nine Dragons seal had been brought by Xianyuan Yinglong. But now, this thing was indeed with him. "What do you need, young master?" "As long as I have it, I will definitely give it to you," Xianyuan Yinglong said. To Xianyuan Yinglong, Yang Hongwu could take his life with a thought. Besides, what if it wasn't his life that he wanted? None of the treasures he had could compare to the drop of essence blood that Yang Hongwu had given him. Based on this point alone, he was willing to take out anything. He was willing to do it willingly, without the slightest bit of unwillingness. "Even if it's a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, I won't frown." Yang Hongwu heard this and said, there's no need for that. Besides, the mountain of knives or a sea of fire is nothing to you. What I need is a treasure of the Yan Huang tribe that you have. A treasure of the Yan Huang tribe? Is this what young master wants? As he spoke, Xianyuan Yinglong took out a huge seal. This huge seal was the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal. This huge seal was the clan seal of the Yan Huang tribe in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. It was extremely important to the Yan Huang tribe. The reason why the Yan Huang tribe had declined in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain was entirely due to the loss of the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal. Yes, this is it. Seeing Xianyuan Yinglong take out the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal, Yang Hongwu could tell that this thing was very important to him. Or rather, it was very important to the Dragon Gate. This was a fragment of the Void Dragon Gate. In other words, it came from the same source as his Dragon Gate. As for Ancestor Su Yuan, his eyes widened when he saw the seal. He really wanted to obtain such a thing. This was his goal. However, he could only think about it now. If he dared to face it, he would be able to obtain it. If he got greedy, his life would be over. He knew this all too well. Although the Yan Huang Nine Dragons insignia could raise his bloodline power and allow him to fight against the Emperor of 1,000 dragons, it was nothing compared to his own life. This thing was not something he could covet. Now that this was something his master wanted, how could he have any other thoughts? They could only watch helplessly as the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal landed in Yang Hongwu's hands. This thing was destined to have no fate with him. Young master wants the Yan Huang Nine Dragon insignia? This Yan Huang Nine Dragon seal should not be of much use to young master. Given young master's luck, young master's cultivation, and bloodline power, this Yan Huang Nine Dragon seal is not even worth mentioning. This thing is of no use to me, let alone young master. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong was looking at Yang Hongwu. Seeing him so happy after obtaining the Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal, he was a little surprised and a little confused. This Yan Huang Nine Dragons seal was a very ordinary treasure. It was only of some use to those with the bloodline of the Yan Huang tribe, and those with lower bloodlines. However, for someone with a strong bloodline like Yang Hongwu, it was not of much use at all. It was just a very ordinary treasure. One could even say that it was just a decoration. It did not have much practical value. At most, it could be used as a proof of identity. In truth, this thing was just a jade pendant that his boss, Emperor Huang Xianyuan, had carried around with him. Later on, he had given it to him and brought it to the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. After he had been seriously injured, this jade pendant had been thrown aside. To him, this jade pendant was just a token of his longing for Emperor Huang Xianyuan. Perhaps one day, he could use this jade pendant to find his boss, Emperor Huang Xianyuan, or his descendant. In truth, he suspected that this guy before him was the descendant of his boss, Emperor Huang Xianyuan. However, he did not believe it. After all, although his boss, Emperor Huang Xianyuan, was strong and had a strong bloodline, he was far from such a terrifying level. Therefore, this guy should not be his boss's descendant. However, he might be from the same tribe. Perhaps his boss's bloodline was hiding a stronger bloodline. This was because his boss, Emperor Huang Xianyuan, had once said that his bloodline was only ordinary. It was precisely because his bloodline was too weak that he had been banished from the tribe. At that time, he had thought that his boss was joking. But now, it seemed like it might be true. This young master of his was probably from the imperial bloodline. This thing is useful to me. As for what it is, you don't have to know, Yang Hongwu said. Xianyuan Yinglong scratched his head. Since Yang Hongwu had said so, although he was curious, he did not continue to ask. He was a smart person. Since his young master did not want to say, it meant that this thing was very important. As for how important it was not something he needed to know. As for old ancestor Su Yuan, He thought it through after a while. He only wanted to improve the power of his bloodline. If he could obtain a drop of his young master Yang Hongwu's blood essence, he might be able to improve his bloodline power greatly and surpass the Emperor of Thousand Dragons. Of course, it was meaningless to surpass the Emperor of Thousand Dragons now. It was impossible for him to become the master of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. There was only one master of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, and that was his current master, Yang Hongwu. Young master, are we going to the Thousand Dragon Imperial City now? Old ancestor Su Yuan asked. He was looking forward to seeing the Emperor of Thousand Dragons being taught a lesson by his young master. Given the Emperor of Thousand Dragons' character, it was impossible for him to give up the position of the master of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, let alone submit to his young master. Therefore, this meant that the Emperor of Thousand Dragons' death was imminent. He knew how terrifying his young master was. Besides, there was a very powerful expert beside him, who was a universe overlord. With the two of them working together, the Emperor of Thousand Dragons was nothing. An ant, yes, an ant. Although the Thousand Dragon Imperial City was not the core of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, it was the only way to enter the core of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. To get to the core of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, one had to pass through the Thousand Dragon Imperial City. This was also the core of the force established by the Emperor of Thousand Dragons. Chapter 23:10. Let's go to the Thousand Dragons Imperial City. Yang Hongwu nodded. Now that he had a powerful helper like Xianyuan Yinglong, he naturally didn't need to worry too much. He had sufficient strength. As long as Xianyuan Yinglong could deal with him, he would have enough time to set up the formation. Once the formation was set up, dealing with the so-called Thousand Dragons Emperor shouldn't be too much of a problem. Yang Hongwu was very confident about this. In the Thousand Dragons Divine Domain, apart from the foreign experts, invincible overlords, and void realm experts, Yang Hongwu wasn't afraid of anyone. Invincible overlords were actually secondary. The most important thing was the void realm experts. These were the truly terrifying existences. Yang Hongwu didn't know if these guys existed in this divine domain. If they did, they shouldn't be restricted by the laws here. Yang Hongwu was very clear about this point. In the Thousand Dragons Divine Domain, invincible overlords should also be restricted by the laws. They couldn't act unscrupulously in the Thousand Dragons Divine Domain. However, it was different for Void Realm overlords. Invincible overlords were already so powerful and terrifying. Void overlords were even more incredible. Although Yang Hongwu hadn't seen a void overlord before, he could imagine how powerful and terrifying they were. If he were to encounter a void overlord now, he would be like an ant that couldn't withstand a single blow. It was precisely because of this that Yang Hongwu knew that the things in the Thousand Dragons Divine Domain were fragments of the Void Dragon Gate. If they were combined, they might even form the complete Void Dragon Gate. At that time, once the Void Dragon Gate was restored, it would definitely send down a powerful vision. How could this vision not attract Void Realm experts? If there were clones of Void Overlords in the Thousand Dragons Divine Domain, they would definitely be able to rush here in the shortest time possible. When that time came, how would he be able to resist them? Being weak was indeed a sin. Originally, for Yang Hongwu, there was no difference between the weak and the strong. He didn't care. However, he didn't think so now because the weak didn't have the right to speak. The weak would be trampled on at will. The weak didn't have the right to survive. Of course, he wanted to survive. More importantly, he wanted his woman to live well with him. He didn't want to see them get hurt so that they could live a good life. If it had been in the past, this would not have been a difficult thing. Yang Hongwu himself had always thought so. However, reality would not let him do as he wished. Even if he did not look for trouble, trouble would automatically come to him. This was reality. Reality was so cruel that he couldn't relax. He had to become stronger so that he could protect himself and control his own life. Otherwise, one's life and death would be in the hands of others without any freedom. This was something that Yang Hongwu was unwilling to do. Young master, please follow me. I know of a special passageway that leads to the Thousand Dragons' divine domain. Only I know of this passageway. No one else knows about it, not even the Emperor of Thousand Dragons himself. At this moment, old ancestor Su Yuan was very proud. He had accidentally discovered this spatial passageway that led directly to the Thousand Dragons' imperial city. Even the Emperor of Thousand Dragons himself didn't know about it. This passageway was too special and mysterious. Old ancestor Su Yuan guessed that this passageway must have been opened by a very special expert. It was actually able to avoid the Emperor of Thousand Dragons, the owner of the Thousand Dragons' imperial city. One should know that anyone who entered the Thousand Dragons' imperial city would be detected by the Emperor of Thousand Dragons. This was the basis of being the overlord of the Thousand Dragons' divine domain and guarding the Thousand Dragons' imperial city. No matter how strong the other party was, the Emperor of Thousand Dragons would be able to detect them as long as they entered the Thousand Dragons' imperial city. The entire Thousand Dragons' imperial city was under the control of the Emperor of Thousand Dragons' consciousness. This was because the Thousand Dragons' imperial city was a city that he had built. However, this spatial passageway was so special, as if it didn't exist in this part of the void. This was truly terrifying. A spatial passageway that led directly to the Thousand Dragons' imperial city and wasn't located in the Thousand Dragons' divine domain. How difficult was it to achieve this? How unbelievable was it? All this while, old ancestor Su Yuan had been trying to find out the secret behind this. If he could find it, he would be able to comprehend the supreme great Tao of the void. However, all his efforts were in vain. He had tried countless times and spent an unknown amount of time, but he still failed. This was also why he felt helpless. He could only give up. Oh, as far as I know, the Thousand Dragons' imperial city was built by the Emperor of Thousand Dragons. It can be said that the Thousand Dragons' imperial city is his life treasure. A spatial passageway was opened in his life treasure and he didn't even know about it? That's not very possible, right? Yang Hongwu said. He now knew a lot about the Thousand Dragons' divine domain. He wasn't as clueless as before. If what old ancestor Su Yuan said was true, then the Thousand Dragons' divine domain wasn't as simple as he had thought. The originally complicated situation had become even more unpredictable and complicated. Yang Hongwu had originally planned to conceal his aura and bring the few of them into the Thousand Dragons' imperial city. He was very confident in his concealment technique. As long as he concealed his cultivation base, it would be very difficult for the other party to detect his presence. However, after hearing old ancestor Su Yuan's words, Yang Hongwu became very curious about this so-called spatial passageway. Of course, Yang Hongwu believed that the Emperor of Thousand Dragons might have already known about the existence of this spatial passageway and might have deliberately left it behind. However, when Yang Hongwu arrived in front of the spatial passageway, he was indeed shocked. Xianyuan Yinglong was the same. Yang Hongwu was able to discover the uniqueness of this spatial passageway because Yang Hongwu cultivated a special cultivation technique and his eyes of life. As for Xianyuan Yinglong, he was able to discover it because his cultivation base was very high. After all, he was once a powerful invincible overlord. Of course, an expert of this level would be able to see through some clues. As for the others, there was no way for them to see what was so special or powerful about this spatial passageway. Chapter 23:11. As expected, this spatial tunnel isn't simple. I can sense a familiar chi from it. Master, if I'm not mistaken, this spatial tunnel was created by Ju-Kong Overlord. However, why did he leave a spatial tunnel here? It's strange. Xianyuan Yinglong said at that moment. Ju-Kong Overlord had crossed paths with him before. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies either. Moreover, Ju-Kong Overlord was both righteous and evil. However, one thing was for sure, Ju-Kong Overlord was extremely strong. Moreover, he wouldn't leave a spatial tunnel here for no reason. Could it be that Ju-Kong Overlord was also in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain? Xianyuan Yinglong frowned. If Ju-Kong Overlord was here, it wouldn't be easy for him to deal with him. Even if he was in his peak condition, he might not be able to defeat Ju-Kong Overlord. Moreover, he hadn't recovered from his injuries yet. If Ju-Kong Overlord was injured, he might be able to deal with him. However, if Ju-Kong Overlord wasn't injured, it wouldn't be so easy. Xianyuan Yinglong couldn't sense Ju-Kong Overlord's qi in this place. There were only two possibilities. First, Ju-Kong Overlord wasn't injured at all. He was hiding here and had concealed his qi. Second, Ju-Kong Overlord wasn't here. He had just left a spatial tunnel here by accident. If Ju-Kong Overlord wasn't here, it wouldn't be so bad. If he was here, it would mean that Ju-Kong Overlord was in his peak condition. If Ju-Kong Overlord was injured like Xianyuan Yinglong and hadn't recovered, he wouldn't be afraid. However, Xianyuan Yinglong was afraid that Ju-Kong Overlord was in his peak condition. Of course, this possibility wasn't very high. How could an expert of Void Overlord's level be hiding in a tiny deity domain? Moreover, this divine realm couldn't be seized. This was a space opened up by a Supreme Almighty. It was a universe opened up by a Supreme Almighty. If one wasn't a fated person, forcefully seizing the ownership of this place was akin to courting death. Ju-Kong Overlord, who is he? How strong is he compared to you? Yang Hongwu looked at Xianyuan Yinglong and asked. From Xianyuan Yinglong's tone, it seemed like he had some understanding of the Void Overlord. His strength is very strong. Compared to when I was at my peak, he could only be stronger, not weaker. Xianyuan Yinglong said. He had no choice but to admit that Void Overlord was extremely powerful, especially with his unpredictable methods. After all, he cultivated the Way of the Void, which was much more powerful than Xianyuan Yinglong's Way of the Void. If they were to really fight, Xianyuan Yinglong knew that he would be at a disadvantage. Of course, it would be very difficult to determine the winner. After all, the difference between their cultivation realms was not that big. Prince, I've never heard of the Void Overlord, but the Void Sect does. In the Thousand Dragon Divine region, there's a special group called the Void Sect. The Void Sect is extremely mysterious, they rarely appear in public. However, the members of the Void Sect are extremely strong. I've seen an attendant of the Void Sect before. He's extremely strong. Even though he's not as strong as me, he's mysterious and unpredictable. At this moment, Ancestor Su Yuan said. He knew about the Void Sect. However, he didn't have any dealings with the Void Sect, nor did he have any grudges against them. Therefore, he didn't know much about the Void Sect. After all, even a deacon of the Void Sect was so strong. Such a special power wasn't easy to provoke. He didn't want to make an enemy out of them. Only when the time came and he had to deal with the Void Sect would he make a move against them. For Ancestor Su Yuan, his most important enemy was the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. Before the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons was dealt with, he wouldn't act rashly. He wouldn't make enemies easily, especially with such a mysterious and powerful enemy. In fact, the one who should be worried about the Void Sect wasn't him, but the Emperor of 1,000 Dragons. As the ruler of the 1,000 Dragon Divine region, having such a mysterious and powerful group in his territory was a great threat to him. How could he tolerate the existence of such a mysterious and powerful group? It was definitely a provocation to him. Therefore, for Ancestor Su Yuan, the Void Sect could even be said to be his friend, the enemy of his enemy. Void Sect, Void Overlord, it seems like there's a connection between the two. Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes and said, Void Sect, there's no mistake. The group created by the Void Overlord is called the Void Sect, and the Void Overlord is the sect master of the Void Sect. The Void Sect can be said to be spread all over this part of the Void. However, although the Void Sect's influence is widespread, it's hidden very well, and it's not exposed to the public. Therefore, only a few people know about the Void Sect. Xianyuan Inglong said. Back then, the Void Overlord offended a lot of people. Some of them even hated the Void Overlord to the bones. However, no one was able to find the Void Overlord's lair. They simply had no idea where the Void Overlord was hiding. Speaking of which, Xianyuan Inglong's expression turned solemn. Could this Void Overlord really be hiding in the Thousand Dragon Divine Region? It could be said that the Divine Region was very safe. Great beings would usually find it difficult to enter this place, and very few Universe Overlords would take the risk to enter the Divine Region. This was because after entering the Divine Region, they would be suppressed by the laws, and the power they could unleash would not surpass that of a Universe Overlord. Only a very few people were exceptions. Could it be that the Void Overlord's lair was in one of the 13 Divine Regions, or even the Thousand Dragon Divine Region? The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Could it be that the Void Overlord's lair is in the Thousand Dragon Divine Region? At that moment Lu Yu spoke. It's possible. Xianyuan Inglong nodded. The Thousand Dragon Divine Region is one of the 13 Divine Regions. Great beings who enter the Divine Region will be suppressed by the laws of the Divine Region. In the Divine Region, they won't be able to unleash their full power. Furthermore, they might receive special treatment. This is no laughing matter. Many great beings have fallen in the Divine Region and become nutrients for the Divine Region, allowing it to grow stronger and stronger. Therefore, great beings wouldn't dare to enter the Divine Region unless they have enough confidence. However, those who are able to enter the Divine Region are able to protect themselves. For some people, the Divine Region is a protective talisman. It doesn't matter if the Void Overlord is in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain or not. I don't care about that. Even if he's here, I'll kill him if he dares to make me his enemy. Yang Hongwu's eyes narrowed, and a murderous aura filled the air. Chapter 23:12. Xianyuan Inglong nodded secretly. It was a good thing to have courage, aggressiveness, and confidence. Of course, it had to be based on a strong enough foundation. If there was no strong enough foundation, then everything was just empty talk. Everything was just a joke. Young master, you can definitely do it. What absolute space overlord? He's nothing in front of you. Su Yuan Ancestor said. Alright, stop flattering me. If absolute space overlord was at his peak, it would be difficult for me to kill him. However, I'm still confident in this divine domain. In fact, Yang Hongwu wasn't bluffing. He still had a trump card in his hand. He still had a chance to use the strength of his previous life. Once he used it, he could contend against an invincible overlord. Although it would only be for a short period of time, it wouldn't be a problem for him to defeat an invincible overlord in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. As for killing an invincible overlord, it would be difficult. After all, how could an invincible overlord be killed so easily? After all, an invincible overlord isn't just a title. It's a title that requires sufficient strength. Yang Hongwu said, Let's go to the Thousand Dragon Imperial City. Absolute Space Overlord was a powerful universe overlord. No one knew whether he was in the Thousand Dragon Imperial City or not. However, after entering the spatial tunnel, if he was in this space, he would definitely be able to sense who had entered the tunnel. Even Yang Hongwu wouldn't be able to conceal himself. After all, this was equivalent to the inner world of absolute space overlord. How could he not be able to sense anyone who entered his inner world? However, if they concealed themselves well, absolute space overlord wouldn't be able to sense their strength. He would only be able to vaguely sense that someone had entered the spatial tunnel. After the group entered the spatial tunnel, in the depths of the void, a person opened his eyes. This person had a majestic aura and astonishing strength. He was surrounded by countless terrifying and imposing forces. This person was absolute space overlord. He was a peak invincible overlord. He had a chance to become a void overlord. However, he had never been able to break through his limits and enter the void overlord realm. This was something that made him feel helpless. In fact, he knew that the deity plane was a place of inheritance left behind by a void overlord. However, he had paid a huge price to enter the deity plane as an incarnation and left a space passage in the deity plane. This space channel was left behind in order to investigate the inheritances of the realm of the gods. It could be used to communicate with his true self. As long as someone touched it, he would be able to sense the key information within. Those who were able to access the information he left behind were definitely extremely talented and possessed extremely powerful bloodlines and talents. More importantly, one's luck was amazing. None of these three factors could be missing. The person who could possess these three factors was the person who was most likely to obtain the inheritance of the God realm. Void Overlord's goal was to wait for such a person to appear. He was waiting for this person to obtain the inheritance of God domain. Once this person obtained the inheritance of God domain, he could directly seize it. Thus, to the Void Overlord, nothing else was important. The most important thing was that he wanted that person to obtain the inheritance first. He was not worried that the person who obtained the inheritance would be a universe overlord or even an invincible overlord who had surpassed a universe overlord. This was because the person who obtained the inheritance had to have a cultivation level lower than a universe overlord. This was also why those who could enter the deity plane without being restricted were all cultivators below a universe overlord. The fated person has arrived. I hope you won't disappoint me. At this moment, Void Overlord was pleasantly surprised. He communicated with the aura he had left behind in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain and discovered a very familiar aura. It was Xianyuan Inglong's aura. Inglong Overlord's strength was on par with his back then. However, he had never imagined that Xianyuan Inglong would also be in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. Moreover, he was with the person he was looking for. This made him a little worried. Damn that Xianyuan Inglong. Is he trying to make an enemy out of me? Void Overlord was furious. He could not enter the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain with his original body. Once he entered the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, his cultivation level would be suppressed. If he tried to force his way in, he might be severely injured. It was not worth it for him to do so. He could not help but admire Xianyuan Inglong for this. This fellow had actually damaged his own cultivation level to enter the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain with his original body. Previously, Xianyuan Inglong's strength was on par with his. Even if he had a slight advantage over Xianyuan Inglong, it was because he cultivated the Tao of Space, which was one of the strongest Tao of Void. He had relied on the Tao of Void that he had comprehended to suppress Xianyuan Inglong. However, he had never expected Xianyuan Inglong to be so bold. This was something he would never be able to do. He admired Xianyuan Inglong's actions. However, even though he admired Xianyuan Inglong's actions, he could not accept it. He frowned. It was impossible for him to let his original body enter the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. He was not willing to pay such a huge price. If he failed to obtain the inheritance, the loss would be too great. He could not bear it. Therefore, He could only pay a part of the price to condense a powerful clone and send it into the thousand-dragon divine domain. This was a great loss for him, but if he failed, it was still within his acceptable range. It would not harm his foundation. Void Overlord's figure flickered and a figure separated from his original body. Then, it turned into a ray of white light and entered the void. After the ray of white light entered the void, Void Overlord's expression changed. His aura became much weaker. It could be seen that the clone had consumed a lot of his energy. In fact, Void Overlord had paid such a huge price for Xianyuan Yinglong. He was worried that Xianyuan Yinglong would steal his opportunity. However, what he did not know was that Xianyuan Yinglong had not damaged his own cultivation to enter the thousand-dragon divine domain. He had entered the thousand-dragon divine domain to save his own life. He had not damaged his own cultivation, he had been injured by someone. If Void Overlord knew the truth, he would probably vomit blood from anger. There's a strong enemy. This is Void Overlord's aura. He has entered. Xianyuan Yinglong immediately sensed the Void Overlord's clone being sent into a special spatial tunnel in the thousand-dragon divine domain. This was the Void Overlord, there was no doubt about it. Xianyuan Yinglong. Void Overlord. When Void Overlord appeared, Xianyuan Yinglong and Void Overlord looked at each other. Chapter 23:13. You want to rob me of my opportunity? Void Overlord looked at Xianyuan Yinglong and said coldly, Do you know that you're courting death? Your cultivation has been greatly damaged, and you haven't even recovered to your peak. How dare you go against me? If you were at your peak, I might have been afraid, but now your cultivation is far from recovered. You don't even have the cultivation of a universe overlord. How dare you go against me? Rob you of your opportunity? Xianyuan Yinglong was slightly taken aback. He had been healing his injuries and recovering his cultivation in the thousand-dragon divine domain. Since when did he want to rob him of his opportunity? Was there such a thing as opportunity in the thousand-dragon divine domain? Xianyuan Yinglong really didn't know about this. You still dare to play dumb? I think you won't cry until you see the coffin. Today I'll kill you. Seeing that Xianyuan Yinglong was still playing dumb, Void Overlord couldn't stand it anymore. A saber appeared in his hand, and his powerful force burst out. A terrifying power poured into the saber. Void slash. Following Void Overlord's roar, he waved his battle blade and a destructive blade light slashed towards Xianyuan Yinglong. This attack was extremely powerful. Its power had almost reached the limit of what the spatial laws of this place could tolerate. This was the limit of the spatial laws of this place. However, the real lethality of this attack was absolutely beyond the limits of this space. This was the result of one's control over one's power after one's cultivation had reached a high level. In the thousand-dragon divine domain, due to the limit of the space law, one's power was limited to those below the level of a universe overlord. The power of this attack was at the pinnacle of a half-step universe overlord, but its lethality was shocking. This attack was enough to kill a universe overlord. After all, Void Overlord was an invincible overlord, and his comprehension of space law had reached an unfathomable level. Although it was only an avatar of Void Overlord, the power of this avatar was at the pinnacle of a half-step universe overlord. It could be said that this was the limit of what the space law could tolerate. Once this level was exceeded, one would be expelled immediately. However, this was applicable to most people. For some special beings and people with special bloodlines, this restriction didn't exist at all. For example, Xianyuan Yinglong and Yang Hongwu. If Yang Hongwu's cultivation level had reached the level of a universe overlord, the restriction of the space law in the God domain would have no effect on Yang Hongwu. It wouldn't have been able to restrict him at all. What a powerful power, Xianyuan Yinglong said. But Void Overlord, you forgot about the restriction of the space law in this world. In this world, you can't exert your power. If you were at your peak, I would have to dodge this attack. However, there's no need for that now. Although the power of this attack is strong enough to kill a cultivator who has just become a universe overlord, I'm not a universe overlord. I'm an invincible overlord like you. How can this attack be a problem for me? Even though I haven't fully recovered from my injuries and cultivation level, I'm still not someone a mere avatar of yours can kill. Xianyuan Yinglong said loudly. His entire body transformed into a giant golden dragon. This giant golden dragon exuded an astonishing power. This was the power of a dragon. In this world, many energies of the origin merged into Xianyuan Yinglong's body at this moment. His cultivation level was restored, and he could vaguely master the special space law in this world. This was the power of dragons and the bloodline of dragons. The giant dragon that Xianyuan Yinglong had transformed into opened its mouth and breathed out a mouthful of dragon's breath. The dragon's might contained within the dragon's breath triggered the origin energy of this world, causing the pressure to become even stronger and more terrifying. This made the power of his attack increase by several times. Originally, Xianyuan Yinglong's cultivation level hadn't recovered to that of a universe overlord, so the power of his dragon breath was only below that of a universe overlord. It had reached the limit of a half-step universe overlord. Under normal circumstances, this attack could only offset the overbearing absolute space / of absolute space overlord. However, it was different this time. Xianyuan Yinglong's dragon breath triggered the power of a dragon in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. This meant that at this moment, the attack that this avatar of absolute space overlord was facing was not only the power of Xianyuan Yinglong himself, but also the power of the dragon power of the entire Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. In this way, Juekong Overlord's attack was nothing. That overbearing blade attack seemed to be terrifyingly powerful, as if it was going to tear this part of the world apart. But in fact, after it came into contact with Xianyuan Yinglong's dragon breath, it directly dissipated. That terrifying blade light directly turned into nothingness. However, Xianyuan Yinglong's dragon breath did not stop. Instead, it continued to attack Absolute Space Overlord. How is this possible? You're not restricted by the laws of this world and can unleash the power of a universe overlord? How could he not be shocked when he saw that Xianyuan Yinglong's dragon breath did not disperse after his powerful attack was shattered? He realized that he was in big trouble. He had miscalculated. Perhaps Xianyuan Yinglong had already obtained a part of the inheritance. Only after obtaining the inheritance of that expert could he become so powerful, so terrifying, and be able to easily defeat Yi Shiwen's Void Slash. That was why he was able to ignore the laws of this world and unleash power that surpassed the laws of this world. Nothing is impossible. Absolute Space Overlord, today, this avatar of yours will die here. Originally, Xianyuan Yinglong thought that he could block the Void Overlord's attack, but he never thought it would be so easy. He did not dare to believe that his dragon breath could actually trigger the pressure of the laws of the world, making his dragon breath even more powerful. It easily destroyed the Void Overlord's attack. As a matter of fact, the dragon breath seemed to want to kill the Void Overlord's clone. Damn it, I won't let you get what you want. I won't allow anyone to take away my opportunity. Same goes for you. Absolute Space Overlord roared furiously. His avatar started burning. He was going to self-destruct. This sudden change made Xianyuan Yinglong's expression change drastically. He was extremely anxious and shouted, "Retreat, retreat quickly. Leave this place. He's going to self-destruct." The self-destruction of an invincible overlord's avatar was extremely terrifying. Even at his peak, he would not dare to take it head-on. Chapter 23:14. Retreat. You must be dreaming. If I can't even injure you with my self-destruction, how am I, the Void Overlord, going to survive? Void Overlord laughed maniacally. Xianyuan Yinglong, even if you don't die today, you'll be severely injured. Kid, this Xianyuan Yinglong wants to steal your opportunity. Do you trust him? What a joke. After saying that, Void Overlord completely self-destructed. The terrifying energy was like a flash flood. The entire space was torn apart by this tyrannical energy. Especially Xianyuan Yinglong, he bore the brunt of it. That was because Void Overlord's target was Xianyuan Yinglong. On the other hand, Yang Hongwu had already pulled Zi Xintong and Lu Yu out of this special space tunnel. After exiting the tunnel, Yang Hongwu was still worried about being affected by the explosion. Hence, he activated a strong defense. The two girls were enveloped within it. Boom! With a loud bang, the spatial tunnel completely collapsed. Ancestor Shiyuan and Xianyuan Yinglong were inside the spatial tunnel, and it was unknown what kind of terrifying force had struck them. However, at this moment, Yang Hongwu could no longer sense Xianyuan Yinglong's aura. One must know that he was in control of Xianyuan Yinglong's life and death. He had left a mark on Xianyuan Yinglong's body. Now that the mark had disappeared, Xianyuan Yinglong's aura had also disappeared. This meant that Xianyuan Yinglong had been killed by that terrifying energy. However, Xianyuan Yinglong was not dead. His aura reappeared. In the next moment, Xianyuan Yinglong appeared in front of Yang Hongwu. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong's huge body was filled with injuries. It was a horrible sight. His originally majestic and domineering divine dragon body was now unbearable to look at. His dragon horns were broken. The dragon scales on his body were miserable. Countless of them had fallen off. It was as if he had been skinned alive. In the next moment, Xianyuan Yinglong returned to his human form and landed beside Yang Hongwu. Seeing that Yang Hongwu, Zi Xintong and Lu Yu were not injured at all, Xianyuan Yinglong was shocked. Under such a powerful explosion, he was not injured at all. What did this mean? This meant that Yang Hongwu had a powerful treasure to protect him. It also meant that he had spatial techniques or a powerful spatial treasure. To be able to pass through the collapsed spatial passageway, his comprehension of the space Dao must have reached a certain level. Therefore, Xianyuan Yinglong admired his young master even more. He was extremely powerful and astonishing. No wonder he came from that place. His potential seemed to be even greater than Brother Yellow Emperor's. He was even more terrifying. However, he was truly unlucky this time. He had been beaten up for nothing, and had become a scapegoat. Since when had he tried to steal that bastard Juekong Overlord's fortune? His so-called opportunity was actually his young master. This was simply courting death. Who was his young master? Although Xianyuan Yinglong was only guessing, he was sure that his young master Yang Hongwu's potential was limitless. He was destined to become a Void Overlord. As long as he was given enough time, he would definitely become a Void Overlord. He might even surpass the Void Overlord and enter the unknown realm. He would enter a realm that Xianyuan Yinglong did not even dare to imagine. After being wrongly accused, his injuries had returned to their original state. Although his bloodline origin source was not damaged this time, his injuries were not light. It would be impossible for him to recover in the thousand-dragon divine domain. Xianyuan Yinglong could only smile bitterly at this point. Only by entering the void would he be able to recover his cultivation base. Once he entered the void, he would be besieged by his enemies. If they knew that he was there, he would be in big trouble. However, after thinking about it, Xianyuan Yinglong knew that Juekong Overlord would definitely leak the information that he was here. This meant that his enemies already knew where he was. Troublesome, this was really troublesome. Although his young master was strong and had terrifying luck, his enemies were not weak either. If his enemies came, even if Yang Hongwu was stronger, he would not be able to deal with them. Young master, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. Xianyuan Yinglong was very conscious. After coming out, he did not care about his injuries and immediately took the blame. Yang Hongwu nodded. In fact, this was not Xianyuan Yinglong's fault. Although he was at fault, it was not the main reason. Juekong Overlord seemed to have his eyes on him and thought that he was going to obtain some kind of opportunity. This made Yang Hongwu a little angry but also a little confused. If Juekong Overlord had his eyes on him, did that mean that there were other invincible overlords who had their eyes on him as well? If that was the case, he would really be in high demand. Being regarded as an opportunity was not a very good thing. Without sufficient strength, one was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. This was a feeling that Yang Hongwu hated the most. This is not your fault either. That was just a clone of Juekong Overlord, right? His clone self-destructed and caused your injuries to worsen. That fella Su Yuan was also killed. What a pity. Yang Hongwu frowned. Although Yang Hongwu did not like old ancestor Su Yuan, that fella could save him a lot of trouble in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain and make his plan go smoothly. However, Su Yuan's death had disrupted his original plan. Young master, this is all my fault. If I had used my full strength in the beginning, he wouldn't have been able to self-destruct. Xianyuan Yinglong smiled bitterly. Of course, he knew that Yang Hongwu's plan had been disrupted. If it wasn't for this, young master's plan wouldn't have been disrupted. It's all my fault. Forget it. This is heaven's will. As for my plan, it won't be disrupted. Yang Hongwu's eyes flashed coldly. This time, without the spatial passage, the journey to the Thousand Dragon Imperial City would be a little far. He might even encounter some troubles along the way. However, it didn't matter too much. The Thousand Dragon Divine Domain was getting more and more interesting. So everything is under young master's control. That's good, that's good. However, young master, I'm afraid that I can't continue to follow and serve young master. At this moment, Xianyuan Yinglong said. In fact, after Xianyuan Yinglong guessed Yang Hongwu's identity and origin, he really didn't want to leave. After all, it was good to be under a big tree. With Yang Hongwu's talent and luck, it would be very scary when he grew up. Moreover, if he followed Yang Hongwu and grew up with him, he might get countless opportunities and benefits. Chapter 23:15. Of course, Xianyuan Yinglong didn't want to let go of such a good opportunity. This was related to whether he could return to his peak and even break through the bottleneck of the invincible Overlord realm. However, he had to leave because he had too many powerful enemies. If powerful enemies were attracted because of him and Yang Hongwu was injured or even killed, he would definitely die. There was no doubt about it. Now, in fact, he had recognized Yang Hongwu as his master, which meant that he had received Yang Hongwu's luck. Luck was ethereal and illusory. When one's cultivation reached the universe Overlord realm, luck became even more ethereal and elusive. However, this was something that truly existed. Luck was elusive, but there was a long river of luck. However, only those who practiced special great Tao of the universe could see the long river of luck. Yang Hongwu now had the ability to see through people's luck. Yang Hongwu had killed Fate Destroyer's supremacy and seized his Tao of luck. Now Yang Hongwu had integrated the Tao of luck into his eyes of life. Now Yang Hongwu's eyes of life was no longer the Dharma eye of destruction. It was much more powerful than the Dharma eye of destruction. Not only could it devour the heavens to improve itself, but it could also see through the luck of Void Masters. As long as their strength wasn't too much stronger than his, he could see through their luck. Of course, his own luck was also very terrifying. However, he didn't dare to activate all of his luck. If all of it was activated by him, It would be a very terrifying thing. Even he himself wouldn't be able to control it. His current physical body couldn't withstand such terrifying luck at all. You can't serve me? What do you mean? Yang Hongwu frowned slightly and looked at Xian Yuan Yinglong. Was this guy trying to leave? Was he trying to betray him? That shouldn't be possible. If he wanted to betray them, he wouldn't have said it out loud. Don't worry, young master. I'm not betraying you, but I have no other choice. The reason why I suffered such a serious injury in the divine domain is because my enemies have already found out about my existence. They will definitely come to find me and deal with me. My enemies are very powerful. Although young master is powerful, young master can't fight against so many experts. Moreover, it's not worth putting young master in danger because of me. Therefore, it's best for me to leave young master. Xian Yuan Yinglong explained. How strong are your enemies? Are they all invincible overlords? Yang Hongwu frowned slightly. If they were really invincible overlords, he wouldn't be a match for them. At least, not now. After all, his cultivation was still too weak. That's right. Invincible overlords. If they're not invincible overlords, how can they be my match? After all, I was an invincible overlord in the past. Xian Yuan Yinglong said. Therefore, young master, if they come, I won't be able to deal with them. Following young master will bring you a lot of trouble. For young master's safety and great cause, it's better for me to leave. All right. Since you've said so, it's up to you. Hearing Xian Yuan Yinglong's words, Yang Hongwu knew that it was the truth. If Xian Yuan Yinglong's enemies really came, he wouldn't be able to deal with them. Even in the divine domain, if there were too many clones of invincible overlords, it would have a great impact on him. He would be exhausted, and it would be even more troublesome for him to become the lord of the 1,000-dragon divine domain. Yang Hongwu didn't want to waste too much time. Therefore, since Xian Yuan Yinglong said that he wanted to leave, he couldn't stop him. Now that Xian Yuan Yinglong had received Yi Shiwen's help, the problem of his bloodline drying up was solved. Although his injuries were serious, it wouldn't be difficult for him to recover. However, he would have to enter the void to do so. Due to the restriction of the laws in the 1,000-dragon divine domain, he wouldn't be able to recover completely. Entering the void was his best option. However, doing so would be much more dangerous. However, after becoming his subordinate, Luo Yunyang would receive the blessing of Luo Yunyang's providence. It wouldn't be easy for Luo Yunyang to die. Thank you for your understanding, young master. I'll take my leave now. After saying that, Xian Yuan Yinglong turned into a ray of golden light and disappeared into the distance. You're letting him go just like that? At this moment, Zi Xintong said. What he said might not be true. If his enemies were so many invincible overlords, how could he still be alive? I don't believe it. Upon hearing that, Yang Hongwu smiled and shook his head. It doesn't matter. Xian Yuan Yinglong won't be able to escape from me. If he dares to betray me, he'll definitely die. How can my bloodline bear it so easily? Xian Yuan Yinglong was a dragon, and among dragons, he had the purest bloodline. Yi Shiwen's bloodline had merged with Xian Yuan Yinglong's body. It was impossible for Xian Yuan Yinglong to betray Yi Shiwen unless he could quickly become an invincible overlord and restore his cultivation to its peak. In that case, he might have a chance to resolve the restriction of Yi Shiwen's bloodline. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to betray Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's current cultivation was at the level of Tao Master. Although he was still very far away from becoming a great Tao Master and a half-step universe overlord, Yang Hongwu believed that it wouldn't be long before he became a half-step universe overlord. The entire God's domain was an opportunity for him to break through. As long as he controlled the entire God domain, his cultivation should be able to reach the level of a half-step universe overlord. It was even possible that he could directly raise his cultivation to the level of a universe overlord. This couldn't be better. However, now that our guide is gone, Lu Yu said. Moreover, as the ancestor of the Void Demon clan, Su Yuan Ancestor was considered a powerful figure in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. He occupied a large amount of power. Now that Su Yuan Ancestor is dead, I'm afraid the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain will fall into chaos. This will cause some difficulties and obstacles for our next step. Lu Yu looked at Yang Hongwu. After all, Su Yuan Ancestor was one of the few great beings in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. There were very few people who could contend with him. Now that Su Yuan Ancestor was dead, the other great beings in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain would certainly be on guard. In this way, the entire Thousand Dragon Divine Domain would be heavily guarded. As the foundation of the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, Thousand Dragon Imperial City was no exception. Chapter 23:16. There's nothing we can do about it. The so-called experts in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain are probably panicking and on high alert. However, it might not be a bad thing for us, Yang Hongwu said. There were two sides to every coin. The death of ancestor Su Yuan was no exception. He made the experts in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain nervous. The atmosphere in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain had also become tense and heavily guarded. In fact, it didn't affect Yang Hongwu too much. He could use concealment techniques to enter the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. Moreover, the formations and restrictions didn't affect Yang Hongwu too much. He could enter and leave freely. However, it was different for the others. The universe-level experts who entered the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain from the void outside weren't as lucky. They couldn't exert their strength and were restricted by the laws. As a result, even if they were very powerful, their avatars and even their true bodies would be restrained after entering the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain. They couldn't act recklessly. As long as they made any strange movements, it would definitely attract the attention of the native experts in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain and expose their location. If this happened too many times, Yang Hongwu could take advantage of the situation to fish in troubled waters. Therefore, the death of ancestor Su Yuan wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Now that the transmission channel is gone, we can't rely on it to enter the Thousand Dragon Imperial City. We can only rely on flying, Yang Hongwu said. There's no time to lose. We have to move quickly. The two women nodded. The three of them continued to move towards the Thousand Dragon Imperial City. About an hour later, Yang Hongwu stopped. Along the way, they didn't find any living creatures. This seemed a little strange. The surroundings seemed to be lush and verdant, but there was no sign of life. What's wrong? Zi Xintong asked curiously when she saw Yang Hongwu stop. Didn't you notice that something is wrong along the way? Yang Hongwu asked. Something is wrong. The surroundings seem to be full of vitality, but it's actually a land of death. We haven't been able to get out of this land of death, even after an hour. Lu Yu said. She felt that something was wrong along the way. It was impossible that they didn't even encounter a single strange beast. One had to know that although dragons were revered in the Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, dragons were still very rare. Other creatures occupied the majority. However, among these creatures, many of them had the bloodline of dragons. It was just that the power of their bloodline was very thin. However, this journey was especially strange. But there were no animals. It's a land of death. It's true. We didn't meet any strange beasts along the way. We didn't even meet an ant. Could it be that we've entered an illusion? Zi Xintong finally came to her senses. Something wasn't right. I'm not sure if it's an illusion, but we've definitely entered a unique space. This unique space has trapped us here, causing us to be unable to walk out. We've been trapped in this space for a long time. Lu Yu frowned slightly and said, If this space was an independent and naturally formed space without a master, it would be fine. However, if there was a master, it meant that the three of them had been targeted and trapped in this space on purpose. If he wanted to open this space, he had to find the owner of this space. Only then would he be able to do it. However, the problem was that the other party didn't appear at all. They had no clue at all. This was a big problem. How could they solve the problem if they couldn't find the root cause? In order to solve this problem, they had to find the root cause. Yang Hongwu, what do you think? Is this an illusion or a unique space? If it's an illusion, I think it shouldn't be difficult for you. But if it's a unique space, it's a little troublesome. Lu Yu looked at Yang Hongwu and said, if it's an illusion, it's also very troublesome. Yang Hongwu smiled bitterly. One must know that his eyes of life could see through some illusions. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any illusions that could block his eyes of life. If there was an accident, it meant that this illusion was extremely terrifying. It wasn't something that he could deal with. Yang Hongwu now hoped that this was a unique space and not an illusion. If it's just a space, I can still deal with it. But if it's an illusion or an illusory formation, then it's a big problem. My eyes of life is incomparably powerful. No illusory technique can withstand it. Therefore, I don't want us to enter an illusion or an illusion. After hearing Yang Hongwu's explanation, the two girls were a little worried. It was rare for them to see Yang Hongwu so unsure. This time, they were afraid that they were really in trouble, and it wasn't a small problem. Then what should we do? Zi Xintong said. Why don't I try to use my strength to tear this place apart? With that, Zi Xintong gathered all her strength and punched out. This punch contained 80% of her strength. This punch was enough to shatter the space. However, this punch didn't create any ripples in the surroundings. The grass and trees only swayed a little, as if they were just blown by the wind. After swaying a little, they returned to their original state. This time, the three who saw this scene were shocked. Although Zi Xintong's strength hadn't reached the level of a universe overlord, her attack with 80% of her strength was still very domineering. It was impossible that the grass and trees could withstand the impact of such power. This is impossible. Zi Xintong punched out again, but the result was the same. There was still no change. Zi Xintong was on the verge of breaking down. What's going on? What the hell have we entered? Why is it so scary? Is my strength so weak that it cannot even withstand a single blow? At this moment, Zi Xintong was completely defeated. In this place, her strength seemed so weak. It was as if she had become an ordinary mortal. Strange. This is too strange. Lu Yu was completely at a loss. There was no other way at all. His mind was blank. At this moment, Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes. This place was indeed very strange. However, in the domain of the gods, there shouldn't be anyone who was much stronger than a universe overlord. It couldn't be a great being of the void space level. Chapter 23:17. What should we do now? The two ladies looked at Yang Hongwu. After all, they were women. In a situation where there was no solution, they could only rely on Yang Hongwu. In fact, this was a woman's nature. Of course, in fact, this was also a human's nature. In a situation where there was someone to rely on and they encountered a problem that they couldn't solve, they would rely on that person. There's no hurry. Let's figure out the situation first. Let's figure out whether this is an array formation, an illusion, or a unique spatial world. Yang Hongwu took a deep breath and opened his life eyes to observe his surroundings. If it was a spatial world, that would be the best. However, if it was an illusion array, he could also think of a way. It would be fine as long as he didn't encounter those terrifying ancient powerhouses. After all, no one knew how many ancient and freakish existences existed in the endless void. It wasn't as if there weren't any void overlords who could enter the deity realm. Of course, this possibility was too small. Yang Hongwu didn't believe that he would be so unlucky to encounter such a situation. After activating the eyes of life, everything in front of his eyes changed a little. Indeed, this wasn't a formation. It was a separate space, a separate space. It seemed to be the inner space of a powerful treasure. This surprised Yang Hongwu. A powerful treasure. This was definitely a void-level treasure. Only such a powerful treasure could make him fall into a trap without him noticing. Ordinary supreme treasures wouldn't be able to do this at all. Yes. If he could obtain such a treasure, his strength would undoubtedly increase tremendously. Furthermore, this seemed to be an incomplete void treasure. If he could obtain a complete void treasure, wouldn't it be awesome? Of course, this depended on luck and opportunity. Not everyone had such good luck and opportunity. Of course, Yang Hongwu believed that his luck and opportunity had always been good. Since this supreme treasure had led him into its inner space, it proved that they were fated to be together. It shouldn't be a big problem to obtain this void treasure. However, in the void, could it be that void-level ultimate treasures were as common as cabbages? Could they be found so easily in the void? This really surprised Yang Hongwu. Did you see any clues? What the hell is going on? What kind of place is this? At this time, Zi Xintong looked at Yang Hongwu and couldn't help but ask. This is the inner space of a supreme treasure. Yang Hongwu explained. The inner space of a supreme treasure? Lu Yu was shocked. If this supreme treasure could let them enter without them noticing, then it was definitely not simple. If this supreme treasure was controlled by someone, it would be very troublesome. If no one was controlling it, it would be very powerful. That's right. If I'm not mistaken, this should be a supreme void treasure. It's incomparably powerful. If news of such a supreme treasure were to spread, I'm afraid those invincible overlords would fight for it. Even the overlords of the void realm would fight for it. Even the overlords might snatch it because we are now in the inner space of such a powerful supreme treasure. Yang Hongwu explained. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for us? I haven't seen a powerful supreme treasure of the void before. And now we are in the inner space of a supreme treasure of the void. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Zi Xintong's eyes were shining. This was a supreme treasure of the void. If they could obtain it, that would be great. Yang Hongwu couldn't help but cough dryly. In fact, he also had a supreme treasure of the void. The ancient Dragon Gate and the Yen Huang 9 Dragon Seal were both supreme treasures of the void. They were part of the Void Dragon Gate. If he could fuse them together, he would obtain the true supreme treasure of the Void Dragon Gate. Of course, this would have to wait until he obtained the other fragment. The other fragment of the Void Dragon Gate was in the 1,000 Dragon Imperial City of the 1,000 Dragon Divine Domain. Moreover, it seemed to be in the possession of a powerful existence. Whether he could obtain it was still unknown. Of course, no matter what, he had to test it out. After all, he still wanted to obtain the entire divine domain. That existence wasn't as terrifying as he had imagined. Of course, for him, if he wanted the 1,000 Dragon Divine Domain and that supreme treasure of the void, it shouldn't be a difficult task. Therefore, there should be a reason why he didn't take them. Either it was because he couldn't obtain these things and was bound by something here, or it was because he disdained to take these things. No matter which reason it was very advantageous for Yang Hongwu. Of course, Yang Hongwu wasn't thinking about these problems now. He had to solve the problem in front of him. How could he obtain this supreme treasure of the void? If this supreme treasure of the void didn't have an owner, then that would be the case. However, this was under the premise that this supreme treasure of the void didn't have an owner. If this supreme treasure of the void had an owner, then it would be very troublesome. Of course, there was also the possibility that this supreme treasure of the void had an owner. Of course, there were benefits. However, the possibility of trouble was much higher. What's there to be excited about? Right now, we are surrounded by danger. We don't even know if we can survive, Lu Yu said snappily. Haha, Lu Yu, you're thinking too much. With Yang Hongwu here, we will definitely be able to survive. This is merely a supreme treasure of the void. What's the big deal? It's definitely not a problem. I reckon that Yang Hongwu is now thinking about how to refine this supreme treasure of the void. Zi Xintong looked at Yang Hongwu and said, Am I right? Awu? Yang Hongwu smiled bitterly. This girl was becoming more and more confident in him. He wasn't invincible. How could he be so confident? It's easy to think about it. If this supreme treasure of the void has no owner, then it'll be fine. However, if it has an owner, then it'll be very troublesome, Lu Yu said. It's definitely ownerless. Besides, even if it has an owner, we can make it ownerless, Zi Xintong said cheerfully with an indifferent expression. When these words came out, Yang Hongwu and Lu Yu were speechless. How could it be so simple? The owner of a supreme treasure of the void was definitely not simple. It was impossible to deal with him easily. Now, Yang Hongwu hoped that this supreme treasure of the void was ownerless. If it had an owner, then he wouldn't dare to have any ideas about it. Moreover, it might depend on the other party's mood. Otherwise, the three of them wouldn't have an easy time. Chapter 23:18. You can't say that, said Lu Yuxian. If you say that, what if the owner of this place, who doesn't have any ill intentions, becomes enemies because of your words? When Lu Yu heard that, he said, There's a reason why trouble comes from the mouth. Some mighty figures value their reputation. Therefore, they can't speak too casually. That's true. Weakness is a sin. If you're strong enough, you can say whatever you want. Zi Xintong agreed. I'll keep that in mind. In the future, I can't casually say bad things about great beings. If they're weaker than me, then there's no problem. Upon hearing this, Yang Hongwu and Lu Yu's faces darkened. No matter if you're a great being or a weak being, you can't be too casual with your words. That's right, said Lu Yu. That's right. I'm still weak now, but I'll be a great being in the future. If anyone dares to say bad things about me, I'll get back at them when I'm strong enough. Zi Xintong laughed and said. Upon hearing this, Yang Hongwu felt that Zi Xintong's personality had changed. However, in such an environment, the atmosphere became less tense. Yang Hongwu frowned slightly as he looked at the space. Although his eyes of life could see that this was a very special space, it was a space of a void true treasure. But it was still a void true treasure. Even if it was incomplete, it wasn't something that he could fully see. He was still a little too weak. If he could raise his cultivation level by another level, perhaps it wouldn't be too big of a problem. Dao Master wasn't enough. If he were a great Dao Master, he might be able to see it. However, the possibility of raising his cultivation level to that of a great Dao Master and becoming a half-step universe overlord in a short time was too slim. Unless he could obtain the complete Void Dragon Gate or control the entire Thousand Dragon Divine Domain, it would be possible for him to raise his strength tremendously. Otherwise, it would be impossible. What? Can you tell? Does this void true treasure have an owner or is it an ownerless object? Zi Xintong asked. Zi Xintong was very concerned about this issue. Of course, Lu Yu was also very concerned about this issue. If there was no owner, then the possibility of obtaining this supreme void treasure was very high. A supreme void treasure was enough to raise their strength to a new level. It would be very helpful for future battles. Lu Yu was also very concerned about this issue. If there was no owner, then the possibility of obtaining this supreme void treasure was very high. If it had an owner, then was the owner of this treasure hostile to them? Why had he lured them here? This was also a mystery. Although the truth would be revealed soon, even if it was just a short period of time, it made them feel as if a year had passed. This was not a good feeling. It has an owner, but it also has no owner. Yang Hongwu nodded, then shook his head. What do you mean? Why does it sound so contradictory? When Zi Xintong heard this, she couldn't help but slap her forehead and say, how can it be like this? Either it has no owner, or it has an owner. The owner of this supreme void treasure has an incomplete consciousness. Perhaps the original owner has already fallen. That's why I said this. Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes and said, the incomplete consciousness controlled this supreme void treasure. Yang Hongwu still didn't know the true face of this supreme void treasure. In fact, they had entered the space of this supreme void treasure because of some special reasons. It wasn't that the incomplete consciousness had done it on its own initiative. Instead, it had unconsciously lured Yang Hongwu and the others here. Or perhaps, because of Yang Hongwu and the others, the incomplete consciousness had begun to recover and had not taken the initiative to attack Yang Hongwu and the others. However, for Yang Hongwu, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just an incomplete consciousness. For Yang Hongwu, as long as it didn't have a real body, it would be easy to deal with. Yang Hongwu's devouring furnace was much more effective against spiritual bodies than physical bodies. As long as the spiritual body wasn't too strong, so strong that the devouring furnace couldn't handle it, Yang Hongwu wasn't worried. In this space, the incomplete consciousness was indeed very powerful and terrifying when it was at its peak. However, now Yang Hongwu still had some confidence that he could devour and refine it by paying a certain price. This is the void-piercing spirit. Suddenly, a message appeared in Yang Hongwu's mind. This message recorded the name of the incomplete consciousness in front of him. What is the void-piercing spirit? Zi Xintong and Lu Yu didn't understand and asked, do you know the origin of this incomplete consciousness? The void-piercing spirit is a special creature in the void. It can easily break the void barrier and enter other worlds. A powerful void-piercing spirit can even ignore the void barrier and enter other void. This is the void-piercing spirit. Usually, only one void-piercing spirit can be born in a void, or it may not be born at all. Right now, this incomplete consciousness is the incomplete consciousness of the void-piercing spirit. This space, or rather, this void treasure, may be built to imprison the void-piercing spirit. If this is the case, then it will be very troublesome. Yang Hongwu's face became somewhat heavy. If even the void-piercing spirit could be imprisoned, then it would certainly be easy to imprison him and the others. Prison of 10,000 spirit. Thinking of this, another word appeared in Yang Hongwu's mind, a name, the prison of 10,000 spirits. This prison of 10,000 spirits, as the name implied, was a prison for tens of thousands of spiritual bodies. Tens of thousands, not only 10,000, but countless, innumerable. As long as a spiritual body was imprisoned in this prison, it was afraid that it would be impossible to get out. In fact, the prison of 10,000 spirits, human beings were also spiritual beings. Yang Hongwu smiled bitterly. This was really troublesome. Prison of 10,000 spirits, you mean, this is a prison? Zi Xintong said, we have broken into a prison? This so-called void treasure is actually a prison? At this moment, Zi Xintong opened her eyes wide. She almost couldn't believe it. Yes, this void treasure should be a prison to imprison people. Man is the spirit of all things, in fact. He is also a kind of spiritual being. Naturally, he can't escape from the prison of 10,000 spirits, but fortunately, this is only an incomplete prison of 10,000 spirits. We still have a chance to get out. But how to get out is a big problem. I still can't find a solution in a short time. I have to think carefully and ponder over it. Yang Hongwu said. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.